first things first. It is a Monday morning. I'm Jenna Wolf. That's the Hall of Famer Chris Carter. This is Nick Wright.
Do you guys know what today is?
What's the day after the NBA season ended?
It is, well, 3 days after the NBA season ended. However, it is our 200th show.
Oh, get out of here.
Well, 100 show milestone.
I have a lot of moisturizing cream on my hands.
No problem, Jenna. I'm used to your hands being a little greasy. It's good.
That is weird.
Congratulations,
I can cash in my ticket then. I won the bet.
We wouldn't.
One of my buddies had bet me significant amount of money that I wouldn't be able to make it 200 shows with Nick. I made it. I told him I was going to make it.
There you go. Absolutely.
Very nicely done. I will say congratulations to both of you, and I apologize to you. After 9 months of me being on the show bragging about how much I love volleyball and how good I'm at volleyball, I got a text from Cece inviting me to a volleyball tournament, to which I responded.
National volleyball tournament.
Yeah. What did I respond?
Silence.
Silence. Yeah, I think you got a text and then you got a FaceTime. I think you got a lot, and it was like, oh, sorry,
no,
I didn't have my phone.
I was at the pool with my little one, so I apologize for that. Next time that tournament comes down to the Tribeca, New York City area, I will be there.
Harper and Quinn, we're going to fact check that after the show.
Fact check that. All right. Let us chat some basketball. It is the Monday after the last NBA game of the season.
A lot of pretty people there, Jenna. You missed them.
Okay, that's on me. You're right. Because I'm all about the pretty people. The time for dust to settle and for baseball to take center stage. Oh, but wait, we are nowhere near done with how this NBA season ended. Over the weekend, Friday, the Warriors won their third NBA title in 4 years, sweeping the Cavs. 5 minutes after that, LeBron James comes to the press conference podium with a soft cast on his shooting hand. Reports surfaced he punched a whiteboard after the Game 1 loss, after the frustration. So let's discuss this from all angles. Chris, I'll start with you. How much do you blame LeBron for hurting himself and, as an extension of that, the team?
Well, Jenna, you said it all right there. It's something that's self-inflicted. It's something that with a little more self-control. So I'm going to tell you that I'm a little disappointed in LeBron. I'm not disappointed that he acted out and had some type of emotion, because being in a NFL locker room, seeing NBA players, knowing that emotion is a huge part of sport, but you are responsible for your body. Denny Green used to tell us that. Like, when you leave this office, if you're in a certain condition, if you're injured, I expect you to be back tomorrow morning for treatment. But if you're not, I expect you to be in the same condition tomorrow when you arrive. Now, I would say in my years in the NFL, I've seen more things punched. I have seen things thrown, and I've just never been about that. I've never said anything to the people. I just didn't think that those things were necessary. And this takes me back to this first of four series with Golden State, when Kyrie Irving gets hurt. It's like, man, if the game hadn't gone to overtime. Remember that? That was the first time they played.
He was already playing on a gimpy knee. If people don't remember, he was on a minutes restriction in the conference finals. He was supposed to be on a minutes restriction in the NBA finals. It was a close game. They had a chance to win it. He plays above the minutes restriction. Then it goes to overtime. He keeps playing. And in overtime, he breaks his kneecap.
Right. So if the Cavs, if they're able to close it out, they're with a rebound or something else, or a timeout, or a dish out to LeBron, and LeBron finishes off Golden State in game number 1. It's a huge what if. And this is what happens in sports. When you don't have the type of conclusion, you start going back and saying, okay, well, what if this would have happened? Ultimately, LeBron is responsible. Regardless of what anyone else would say, LeBron is responsible. He's responsible for his own emotion. He's responsible for how he reacts. Now, for me, I'm a little surprised, because LeBron, for the most part, he shoots basketball right-handed, but he eats and he writes left-handed. To me, if he was going to throw a punch, I thought he would have thrown a punch with his left hand, which would have affected his off-shooting hand. Now, it's fairly obvious that he had some type of injury. Well, how is it obvious? Because LeBron is not one of the superstars or players we've ever seen in sports that ever made any type of excuse about an injury. He's coming off in his 15th season playing all 82 games. Now, were there games he could have sat? Yes. Did he ever make any type of excuses? No. So I know the injury was significant. And him having the brace on after game number 4 in the press conference, that right there is even more proof that, because he wouldn't wear the brace, and they wouldn't just make up this story. I do believe in him that much.
Well, and there's a great side.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And there's a great side-by-side that I think that was put out, I saw it on Twitter, of LeBron's left hand versus his right hand in game 4. And his left hand, you can see his veins, you can see those tendons that run up. His right hand is clearly swollen. I can tell you this. with utter certainty from talking to people after Game 4. LeBron did not want this information out there. LeBron's people were not the ones that leaked this information. LeBron was more comfortable with the narrative being he didn't play that great of a Game 4 than the narrative being he injured himself. So it not only is like, did LeBron not want this as an excuse? He didn't want this out there. The information was out there before he put on that soft cast, and then once it was out there, he ended up wearing the soft cast, but I was told he wouldn't have worn it otherwise. But to answer your question, how much do I blame him? Listen, man, you don't get a pass for a self-inflicted injury. And when you're LeBron, you don't really, part of LeBron's path to being considered the greatest player ever, one of the first pieces of information I use when I make that argument is his durability and longevity and the seemingly imperviousness to injury he has over every other player.
Yes.
So if his performance is hindered by an injury, much less an injury that didn't happen on the court, but happened off the court, of course that's a black mark. Of course that's a negative. Like, there is no, now you can spin it the other way, which is even after the injury, guy averaged almost a triple-double in the finals, shot over 50%. He played really well with a broken hand, but not nearly good enough for the team to be able to compete for the title. And your what-ifs, I can go down a list of them. There's some great what-ifs that this now gets added to.
So he's cognizant enough to know that he doesn't want the injury out there as an excuse. He doesn't want anyone using any excuses for himself. But yet, like, where was that cognizance, or where was that, like, frame of mind when he's punching a whiteboard out of sheer frustration, knowing that you might need your hand to play 3 or potentially 4 or 5 more basketball games?
It is the reality, Jenna. And obviously he has a great deal of self-control. But LeBron told us in between Game 1 and Game 2, that would be your answer. Well, what is it, Chris? It's one of the biggest losses he ever had in his life. It affected him in that kind of way that he did punch something, and he told us that. A lot of times players don't tell us the truth. Oh, no, it's another loss. We're going to move on to game number 2. But that's the only reasoning behind it. He would qualify that as one of the greatest losses, which his overall reaction was played out with him punching the whiteboard.
And the part of that game that he keeps saying taken from us, he was not punching, again, according to the people I've talked to that are as close to LeBron as you can get to. It was not about JR's mistake. It was not about
So he
George
wasn't disappointed
Hill's
with
I think he was disappointed with all of them, but the part that he was furious about was the call. The overturned call. Right. That's the part that he...
That gets lost.
That's the part that he makes the point on. I thought I read that play better than any play I'd read in my career. He also... or at least people around him agree with the point I made, which was it was an illegal review.
Yes.
That it wasn't just a missed call, but the referees had to go outside of the bounds of the rules to review it. So you talk about what-ifs. There are great what-ifs in NBA history. What if the Thunder never trade James Harden? What if the Thunder don't blow a 3-1 lead to the Warriors and Durant doesn't leave? But just refereeing-based what-ifs. Man, what if a phantom, what they believe is a phantom call, is not called on Bill Laimbeer at the end of the '88 finals on Kareem when the Pistons are up 3-2. Then Magic Johnson's 4-5 in the finals, and the Pistons potentially have a 3-peat instead of a 2-peat. What if in 1994, first year without Michael Jordan, when it's 2-2 in the Eastern Conference semifinals, Hugh Hollins doesn't make an absurd foul call on Scottie Pippen on Hubert Davis? Do the Bulls win a title without Michael Jordan? What if in the 2002 Western Conference Finals, when the Kings are up 3-2 on the Lakers don't shoot 27 fourth-quarter free throws in order to tie that series? Like, there are some referee-based what-ifs that we see the butterfly effect on. And what if this call is not overturned, and then the Cavs win, and LeBron doesn't break his hand, and he's coming off the best playoff game of his life? Like, there's a lot of what-ifs that now led to a broken hand and a sweep.
As a gambling man, that's hard for you to, you can't really buy into it. We're all about it's all about what ifs. You think the series could have been different had he not broken his hand?
The series wouldn't have been different as far as the result. Now, how many games they would have played, I think, would have been different. But ultimately, Golden State would have gotten their 3rd title in 4 years. But from another sports perspective, we saw Tom Brady play with a bad hand in a playoff game, and he still was able to get the job done. And that's the difference, sometime with some of the greatest of the greats, how much pain can they play with? And that's what we saw Tom Brady. Tom Brady didn't make any excuses. LeBron didn't try to make any excuses, but there was a series of games. And if he would have maybe if there was only one game after that, game number 2, then we wouldn't even would have known about it.
Well, and what I will just say is this. I think the Warriors would have won this series no matter what. Going into it, I said Warriors in 5. You said Warriors in 4. We thought the Warriors were a heavy favorite. But if after game 1, the Cavs have stolen home court and LeBron is playing, he was playing at the highest level of his career going into the NBA Finals.
Now, he wouldn't have 51.
He would have had 49.
Yes.
It would have been 49. It was 49-8-8 where he was sitting going. If they have won that game, we are talking about this being a long series and potentially the greatest moment of LeBron's career. Instead, it turns into as short of a series as you can get and arguably the second worst moment of his career. That's the punch of the whiteboard and the overturned call.
All right, we will get to all of this from the Warriors' perspective as well. Coming up, how will this Golden State dynasty be remembered in NBA history? That's next. First things first. We're going to get to the Warriors dynasty in a second, but first, Dustin Johnson holing out for the Eagle on 18 to win the St. Jude Classic yesterday. DJ returns to #1 in the world. Good news, he won. Bad news, no one that's ever won the week before has ever won.
Yeah, you see that right there, that arc on that ball right there, Nick? That's what you call a confused ball. Well, what is that? Ball don't go left, it don't go right, well, it just goes straight.
An Eagle on 18 to win the tournament?
Oh, no, he was on fire. Cruised through the front 9, shot even par, but hit the turbo on hole number 12.
Guys, check this out.
Stop.
Young baller, dropping the D. Textbook crossover. Future little Kyrie here in the making. What?
Oh, no. We got to blur out that little man's face. The defender. That ain't fair to do a youth like that,
So
see?
little.
Man, that ain't the kid's fault. That's his dad's fault. Man, your dad ain't no good athlete.
Hey.
Oh, my goodness. He got a nice haircut, though.
We're just running. We're blaming the kid's
That was a mean
dad's not
crossover
good
right there.
athlete.
Yeah,
All right,
well,
get
it ain't the
excited,
kid's
guys.
fault.
Here we go. Brazil taking on Austria in a World Cup warm-up match. Neymar destroys the defender, finishes the goal. Don't forget, we kick off Thursday on Fox and FS1. It's all going down.
So excited. This is big news for Brazil, though. Neymar being injured, now back playing. He was in question headed into the World Cup.
That's why this highlight's so important. It's not, I mean, listen, Neymar is one of the 4 best soccer players alive, so the goal's great. But there was worry after he got hurt in his Paris Saint-Germain game a few months ago if he was going to be available for the World Cup. We now know he is. He's one of the 3 biggest players in the world right now.
You guys are awesome.
We follow sports, Jenna Wolf.
That's it. What's up? Back to the Golden State Warriors. So on paper, in the history books, and at times on the court, their 4-game sweep over the Cavs seemed effortless. They have now won back-to-back NBA titles and their 3rd in 4 seasons. Kevin Durant won his 2nd straight Finals MVP, and if a dynasty wasn't already born, it certainly is now. CC, how will history remember this Warriors dynasty, which doesn't appear to be ending anytime soon?
Regardless if you don't like the Warriors, you do like the Warriors, you have to be fair with them. And you have to compare them, I would say, to 2 or 3 teams that I've seen. That was the Lakers team with Kareem and Magic, worthy, and the Bulls team. And I would say this team. Those are the 3 best teams that I've seen, I'll say, in the last 30 years. So what they've accomplished, and I won't even discuss how they got there. Well, Kevin Durant came after 2 of them. But I believe that right there, their legacy will be attached to the end of it. Right now, they're one of the 3 best teams that's ever played the game with the collection of stars and the talent that they have. You can compare them. You could go roster, you can go coach, like you could break down organizations, and I think that the Warriors, they would be right there. I think there are some teams more talented. I thought the Lakers and Kareem and them were a little more talented, especially their bench than them. And then, of course, when you have Michael Jordan, you have to consider him because he had the run, and he was Michael Jordan. He never lost in the finals. So I think those 3 different, in the last 30 years for me, those are the 3 best teams I've seen.
All right, so I agree this is absolutely one of the best teams we've ever seen, maybe the best team we've ever seen. But I do not think this is a dynasty yet because this is a different team than went to the first 2 NBA finals. So in order, the dynasty has to be who are your best players, and they have to be consistent throughout. That's why it's Magic and Kareem with the Lakers when they went to 9 NBA Finals and when they won 5 rings. Scottie and MJ, you're overlooking one, I think, or maybe you don't elevate them to that level. Kobe and Shaq, when they went to those 3, when they went to 4, but they won 3 in a row.
Right. I just thought the first Lakers team, I didn't want to have 2 Lakers teams in there.
Fair enough. So, so to me, this will be a dynasty if they stay together. But you're not a dynasty when you've won 2 rings. And the Kevin Durant Warriors have won 2 rings.
Wait, you think in 20 years people are going to remember that Durant wasn't there on the first one? They're going to be like, oh, wait, wasn't Kevin Durant? No, he was.
Of course, first of all, yes, absolutely, they will know that Kevin Durant was
We'll
not
have
there
the end of the story then, so I think that it will either change the number of years, but that's what we'll do to make sure.
You look overall and say this Golden State team minus Kevin Durant.
I just
really
don't.
Well, this is the thing. I think you're making an honest point. If they don't win anymore, this is all we have.
Correct.
But then Nick would be right.
If they don't win anymore, it's not a dynasty. Now, 3 out of 4 would have been if it was Steph, Clay, Draymond. But when the best player is added midway through, you have to reset the dynasty clock. Like, now, if you want to say organizationally, but I don't think when...
I think you make a great point, and I haven't heard that. I mean, you have to reset it because you're right, their best player.
Their best player. Like, if KD hadn't been this good and Steph was still the
It was somewhat like
force,
Dwayne Wade, even though it was separated. Dwayne Wade, like his championships with LeBron...
are totally separate.
Totally separate.
And so, like, to me, the reason the Spurs were looked at over such a long stretch of time, even though they never won back-to-back, was their best player was the same every title until the very last one. Like, by then, Duncan was a supporting player. But when the Spurs won in 99, 03, 05, 07, that was a dynasty, even though they never won back-to-back, because the best player, the coach, were consistent throughout.
And the team kind of grew organically. They didn't take stars from other teams. They took role players and or drafted and developed their own players.
And this isn't, listen, I was wrong about the Warriors a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, when I said they should have stood pat. I thought it was the greatest team I'd ever seen that won 73 games. They came this close to winning and back-to-back NBA Finals. I said I wouldn't have changed anything. Obviously, that was laughable. Kevin Durant going there is the ultimate cheat code. I was dead wrong about that. And I do think it might be the most talented team I've ever seen. But back-to-back titles is not a dynasty. And 3 out of 4 is only a dynasty if it's the same people involved. Like, they will be a dynasty, I believe, because I think they will win either next year or the next 2 years, or they could rip off an unbelievable run here. But you can't add your best player midway through and then say, but we get the credit dynastically from the first 2.
Wouldn't that be the case if Kevin Durant was light years above everyone else on the team? But can't you make a case that Steph and Kevin Durant are for the most part, fairly on par, that Steph could easily be the superstar on this team and you're adding
Sure, but not in the NBA Finals they haven't been. In the regular season, you can make an argument for either one. In the finals,
the guy that got the MVP,
both times,
we added him.
Right, and he was clearly their best guy last year, and I thought he was their best guy except for in one quarter and in Game 4 this year.
You would have a strong argument if they had split, and especially maybe if Steph had gotten the first one.
Okay.
But now with KD being clearly, when you're playing against the best player in the world in LeBron, it has stood out that KD and LeBron are the 2 best players. And in the series, because he was on the winner, KD was awarded the trophy as far as the MVP.
I mean, when we talk about dynasties in sports, I know the organization, we call it the Bulls dynasty or whatever, but we are talking about the star players. We talk about the Yankees in the late 90s. Jenna, Jeter, Pudge, Bernie Williams, right? Like I said, Pudge, Posada, pardon me. And Mariano Rivera on the latter half
Yvonne
of that.
wanted to be on that team.
I know. Like when we talk about the Lakers, we are talking about Kareem and Magic, and then we're talking about Shaq and Kobe. We're talking about the Celtics. We're talking about Bird and McHale. Jordan, or the Bulls, it's obviously Pippen and Jordan. Like, we're not talking about organizationally. And organizationally, the key piece was added 2 years ago, and you can't have a 2-year dynasty.
How many more rings does this Warriors team? One more and it's a dynasty?
Yeah.
You both agree?
I mean, it's so tough. When do they get it? You know, if they get it in 3 or 4 years, when I say it was a dynasty, it's gonna be close. It's going to be hard if they win in the next 3 years to say that this wasn't some type of dynasty.
Of course.
Well, just the years and everything, but man, this start winning 2 in the first. It would be hard to not have them in the conversation as far as not being a dynasty.
All right, we'll talk about this, I'm sure. Coming up, though, D. Wade chimes in on where LeBron should end up this offseason. Here's from him next on First Things First. Time for some stories to start your morning. With LeBron's future in question, Kevin Love is trying to keep him in Cleveland. Love says he wants to play with LeBron for the rest of his career. Memo to Kevin Love, you got an uphill battle, buddy. CC, what are the chances LeBron stays in Cleveland?
Slim. I'll say less than 10%. I mean, unless one of his sons,
so you're saying
Bron,
there's a chance.
The 13-year-old comes home and say, hey, Dad, you know something? I like my AAU team I'm playing on. I want to play at St. V. I want to play the same high school where you played. That would have a pull on LeBron and on his mom and on the grandmother. But I would say less than 10%.
I say the only shot is if the entire family's unanimous that they want to stay. Because from a basketball perspective, from a trust perspective with ownership, from a teammate perspective, from a championship perspective, Cleveland's his worst option. The only reason would be is if his sons and his wife say, we desperately want to stay here.
Or if the rest of the team retires.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So I'd say no shot.
All right, to Kyle Korver now. To say he had a rough NBA Finals would be a bit of an understatement. The guy shot 1 for 16 in 4 games of the Finals. 1 shot, 4 games. If I did the math, what is that, Nick? Like
6.25%.
6.25% was what I was going to say. Nick said it first. Nick, how bad was Korver's Finals performance?
It was somehow worse than last year's. Last year, they thought he wasn't playable. They only put him on the court in key moments or in certain moments. He obviously missed the shot that helped change the NBA Finals. I mean, this year, he didn't make a shot in games 2, 3, and 4, and in game 1, he made 1. Like, he played as poorly as you can offensively after being maybe their second best player during the Eastern Conference playoffs. He shot 46% from 3 until the NBA Finals, and then he shot 11% from 3 in the NBA Finals.
The Warriors did an amazing job defensively. You have to give them a lot of credit. They know his style. He is like a poor man's version of Klay Thompson, who they play against all the time. So they play up on the three-point line. They dare him to dribble the ball, and then in matchups on defense, they go right at him. So they make Ty Lue put him in a pickle as far as do we play him, and he lost his confidence after game number 1.
He was terrible, man.
All right, moving on to someone who did actually take shots and make shots, Steph Curry. Coming off a rough game 3, he had an excellent game 4. Scored 37 points. He hit 7 three-pointers. CC, what'd you think of Steph's Finals performance?
I thought it was a classic Steph performance. I thought that he came out and was very, very aggressive in the beginning. I thought that was very important. But this is what Steph Curry does. Now, he hasn't had the type of consistency that we would want in the NBA Finals, but his numbers, when you look at the totality of them, his numbers are good. But with KD, with Klay, it's hard to get 30 points every single game. But I was really shocked because this is the first time he really had played well on the road.
Listen, this is the only reason he's not Finals MVP. I shouldn't say the only reason, but the 1 for 14 to start game 3 while Durant was going off is what switched the narrative. But this is the second straight Finals where Steph's been really good. I mean, 28, 6, and 7 is what he gave you. Now, his shooting percentage is not what he would have wanted it to be. And Durant's shooting percentage was excellent, which is why he won the Finals MVP. But last year, he almost averaged a triple-double in the Finals on more than 25 points per game. In 2015, he was the best player on that team and should have won it that year. But this guy was clearly the best.
All right, finally, Kevin Durant won his second straight Finals MVP award. KD averaged over 28 points, 10 boards, and 7 assists in these NBA Finals, including a triple-double in Game 4. Nick, did they give the Finals MVP to the right guy? Because it was Steph early on.
It was Steph early on. Steph got 4 of the votes for Finals MVP. KD got 7 of them. There's only 11 people that vote. Because they got to do it quick now. They got to do it basically as the final game is ending, so they can't do 100 voters. I thought this was a no-brainer. I tweeted out from the game, to me, KD is the clear Finals MVP. Maybe Steph will get it as a make good for 2015. And I think the people that voted for Steph, it was about a make good. Because KD averaged more points, more rebounds, more assists. He shot 53% from the field compared to Steph's 40% from the field. And he was better defensively. Like, in every single box, KD was better. He also had the iconic moment of the series at the end of Game 3, while Steph did have the great quarter at the end of Game 2. It would have been To me, it would have been ridiculous to give the MVP to anyone else.
Yeah, the two things that really stood out to me was the shooting percentage. When you're shooting 53 compared to 40, that right there is a huge difference, and it's going to be hard for the person shooting 40 to be able to overcome that. But if you look at the one thing we said critical about KD in the Houston series was, yeah, he scored a lot of points, but he wasn't a playmaker. When they went isolation, the offense kind of slowed down. He didn't create plays. But he averaged more assists in the finals than Steph did. So he had to drastically address that offensive, and when I get the ball, I'm also going to be a playmaker, not just a scorer. Those are the two things. Shooting percentage and his playmaking ability made it obvious to me why he should get MVP.
The KD jumped his game up in two areas from the Western Conference playoffs to the NBA Finals. Until the NBA Finals in the playoffs, he was shooting less than 30% from three. In the finals, he shot better than 40% from three. And that obviously those huge, long, deep threes in game 3 that were a huge part of them winning that game. And the assist thing, see? Like, you could not be more right about the assists. That he was giving you less than 4 assists per game going into the NBA Finals, and in the finals, he averaged almost 8 a game. Like, that, the jump in the playmaking was enormous because it made the Warriors offense, even when it was running through him, look very Warriors-y with the ball movement and the ball skipping, as opposed to against Houston, where it would be ISOs for Kevin Durant.
How big of a deal is it to win the MVP award at the end of the Finals MVP award? I mean, is it that big of a deal if you already have the title?
Well, this is the thing. When you're playing in an era with LeBron and you're playing on the same team as Steph, and this is the way there's certain sports, they keep certain numbers and certain trophies have more relevance than other ones.
Okay.
And in the NBA, regular season MVP is very, very important, far more important than all-star games. And when you start getting to the finals, the MVP of the finals becomes very, very important, especially if you happen to have somebody. If you have a title, you happen to have MVP during the regular season, some of these other things, especially when you're not considered the best player in the world. To be back-to-back MVP against LeBron James and the Cavs, I believe it's the most significant thing that Kevin Durant has done in his athletic career.
And we got to do the counterfactual for a moment. What if he had gotten neither of these MVPs and they'd won both titles? Then the narrative about him going to Golden State is very different.
You're right.
By winning these 2 Finals MVPs, if
he joined Steph.
Right. When we were having the dynasty conversation last segment, if he hadn't won either of these Finals MVPs and was just a supporting actor in this movie, I might say, yeah, it's a Warriors dynasty. They've won 3 out of 4. Because he's been, though, the leading man in these finals, to me, this feels like the Kevin Durant version of the Warriors. And man, listen, winning back-to-back Finals MVPs is special. It's a special rarefied air. I mean, basically since 1990, and I could go further back, but it's just Jordan, Hakeem, Shaq, Kobe, LeBron, and now Durant. And those also happen to be, aside from Tim Duncan, the 6 of the 7 best players of the last 25, 30 years. So, I mean, yeah, it's an important one.
Okay, back to LeBron James now and the thought bubble that currently resides over his shoulder. What do I do next year? Other bubbles include, this soft cast is itchy, and how did J.R. Smith not know the score? LeBron is a free agent this summer. What's going to factor into his decision? Is it more rings? Is it a better lifestyle? As Nick and Cece said, a better high school for his boys? Former teammate Dwayne Wade weighed in on LeBron's decision.
For me, I mean, I don't think it's a basketball thing. I mean, obviously he's shown this year he could get to the finals, you know, no matter what the circumstances are. I don't really think for him the basketball decision of saying, oh, let me go team up with 3 all-stars. And I think at this point in his life, it's more so of a lifestyle thing of, you know, where my family going to be the most comfortable at, where I'm going to be the happiest at. Because basketball-wise, he's so great, he can bring along and take along whoever.
I will be asking this question in 7,000 different ways and 400 different languages over the course of the next couple of weeks. Where do you think LeBron is going to go, CC?
And Jenna, every time I'm going to try to have a smile on my face, say, Jenna, that's a good question.
Also, are you worried about the Cavs this year?
I want to know, are you asking him where he thinks he's going to go or where he should go?
Where LeBron should go.
Because those might be 2 different things. If you were giving the one thing is a prediction of where he will go. Another thing is, and what I'd really like to hear is, if LeBron came to Chris Carter and said, where should I go? Where's your advice for him to go? Maybe they're the same, maybe not.
I think there's some very compelling stories. I think what they have in the process in Philadelphia it's intriguing. Houston being a healthy Chris Paul away from potentially I think that's a perfect situation for him to battle the Warriors. But I think ultimately, if I'm thinking about LeBron as a company, if I'm hearing what Dwayne Wade is saying, his best friend potentially in the world, I think he's going to go to the Lakers. And the reason why is I think he likes to be supported by an organization. I think that Magic Johnson being there is very, very important. I think that his brand and what he wants to do after basketball becomes very important. I think his son's overall development, especially his oldest one, is a basketball player in Los Angeles, the AAU circuit, the good high school, an opportunity for him to stay there and grow year-round compared to being in Cleveland during the school year and then being Vegas, L.A. in the offseason. I think all those things lead to saying, the Los Angeles Lakers, this is the way they have acquired other great players. So LeBron would be a part of, and that's how they got Kareem. That's how they got a lot of these other great, Shaq. That's how they got them traded for Kobe on the draft. He was drafted by Charlotte. So I believe that the Los Angeles Lakers, to me, are the leading candidate to land LeBron James.
Okay.
So can I just say, if we were in a pitch meeting right now, I'd be like, yeah, let's go. I'm in. Like, that was, by the way, great sell for the Lakers.
So, well, let me add a little bit of information before I give my opinion.
Okay.
First one is this. Anyone that, and I haven't seen anyone do it yet, but I just want to let people know, anyone that goes on TV today or tomorrow or radio, print, whatever, and claims they know this answer is lying to you. Because LeBron does not know yet. LeBron has not made up his mind, which means he could be swayed. It also means it is such a difficult decision because there is no perfect option.
And one thing we have to really be careful with in this, the first decision, I was very, very fortunate. I was with another network, but I was very, very fortunate to have some of the intel. Now, this is their third decision. They did the second decision better than the first decision. The second decision, only a few people knew about that. They were able to get the letter out and everything. It was done almost perfect. This one, I think, will be even done even better, and there will be even less people that know about where he's going to go.
And right now, no one can know because LeBron doesn't know yet. Now, what I do know is this, from a lunch CC and I had months ago that we've kind of alluded to, but never given full details with someone as connected to the NBA as you can get. That person, while is not on LeBron's circle, just on the NBA circle, was convinced, listen, man, it's Los Angeles. The whole league's known he wants to do Los Angeles. It's Los Angeles, plus Paul George, plus maybe someone else. That's what people have been saying for over a year now. And so I know there is momentum towards there. It sounds to me like Dwayne Wade thinks it's Los Angeles, right? But there are, at least in my eyes, the possibility, especially with the latest Kyrie Irving news, that the Celtics are worried that Kyrie, when he's a free agent in a year, is going to go to New York. I would be surprised if there was not the discussion, as Jonathan Jarks laid out on The Ringer, I thought very well, of a sign and three-way trade, where the Knicks, Celtics, and Cavs are all involved, where the Knicks get Kyrie, where the Cavs get draft picks from the Knicks, and where LeBron goes to Boston. Why would you have to involve the Knicks? Because the Celtics don't have the salaries to match up. So you can't just do Kyrie straight back there. And if they think Kyrie could be leaving anyway in a year, that one is interesting. Philadelphia is the cleanest of the opportunities as far as a cap space standpoint and as far as a ready to win. Houston is the best from a winning standpoint, far and away the hardest from a cap standpoint. Far and away the most difficult to make it work. And in the past, LeBron has said, clear up your cap space, and then I'll consider you. Houston is not in a position, in my opinion, where they could tear the team down for a chance to get LeBron. They could only tear the team down for a guarantee to get LeBron.
So the best news out of all this is LeBron is pretty much able to make his decision. The table is set for him to just decide where he wants to go and what's best for him. There's a few little things here and there, but there could be a three-way trade or whatever he wants to do with it. Talk to me about the timing of this. When does he have to make a decision by? When do we expect to hear this by?
Well, there's one. Let me add this one little nerdy note. June 29th is when he would have to opt into his player deal.
Yes. So he has to let the team know, is he going to opt into the deal, which he's not.
So, well, the only reason he would
if they
is a sign and trade.
Okay.
So if the sign-in trade's going to happen, we will know it earlier than free agency because the deadline's June 29th. If the sign-in trade's not going to happen, he's just going to have a clean, then it's sometime in the first couple weeks of July. I mean, he's made people wait in the past. It would July 1st open a free agency.
July 1st is NBA free agency, Jenna, so very good question. When he opts into the contract, that is a drop-dead date. Definitely red alert on that. But LeBron typically has made us wait.
Yes.
I think the first decision was done July 9th, and then the next decision was done July 10th. So he's typically had a little period in there, and that, as far as what he's saying about Houston, they haven't cleared up that cap space. I think the opt-in thing is going to really tell if Boston and that can be done. But to think that a kid in Kyrie Irving that grew up across the bridge in New Jersey wouldn't want to play for a franchise like the Knicks. Also, as a kid, he grew up wanting to play for Duke. All right? He ended up going to Duke. Now saying that he potentially might want to play for the Knicks, that's not a far reach for me. So I think that's a good nugget right there.
And Kyrie, not as a kid, but as an adult, wants to be the man. And sometimes life is unfair. And after he hurt his knee, guess what? Jason Tatum is Boston's adopted son. Jason Tatum is their favorite guy. Jason Tatum is the guy that those fans have already attached themselves to.
Unless LeBron gets there.
Well, sure, but the Kyrie thing, Kyrie wanted out of Cleveland in large part
he
because
didn't choose Boston.
He didn't choose Boston.
Right.
He had said the Knicks, he had said the Spurs, and he had oddly said the Minnesota Timberwolves, which I didn't totally understand, but he had said those three teams.
It said he can prove out his theory that the world's flat up there.
By the way, great. You got to read the New York Times interview where he doubles, triples, and then quadruples down on the world. Maybe not being around, but that's a story for another day.
All right. Oh, this is going to be a fun one to break down over the course of the next month and a half. Oh, thank you, Chris Carter. Coming up, how does Kevin Durant have it harder than LeBron James?
Oh, come on.
I promise you are going to want to hear what he had to say about that next on First Things First. This is the First Things First podcast, the episode brought to you by forhims.com. It's time to discuss an issue that you may not want to hear. 66% of men lose their hair by age 35. But good news, it's easier to keep the hair you have than to replace what you lost. How will you feel a year from now if there are bald spots creeping up? Well, here are your options. Do you want a bald spot to pop up or your hairline to recede, or do you want to do something about it first? This is where forhims.com comes in. It is a one-stop shop for hair loss, skincare, and an overall helpful product for men. That's right. Thanks to science, baldness can be optional. Hims connects you with real doctors and medical-grade solutions to treat hair loss. There are no waiting rooms or weird doctor visits down a back alley. Just go to forhims.com and take action today. It is so easy. Products will be brought right to your door. Here's how to do it. Order now. Listeners get a trial month of Hims for just $5 today, right now, while supplies last. See website for full details. This would cost hundreds if you went to the doctor or a pharmacy. Go to forhims.com/first. That's forhims, forhims.com/first. Forhims.com/first. Good morning.
You look nice.
Thank you, as do you both. All right, among the many perks, you guys know this, that comes with being an NBA legend, commanding the proverbial room, which is why when they talk about each other's superstars, that is, we all listen. For example, Kobe Bryant. He's pretty sure he knows what LeBron's priority should be as he looks for his next team. We listened as Kobe told Bleacher Report, all I thought about as a kid personally was winning championships. That's all I cared about. Now everybody's going to value things differently, which is fine. I'm just telling you how I value mine. If I'm LeBron, you got to figure out a way to win. It's not about narrative. You want to win championships, you just got to figure it out. CC, you made an interesting face there as I was reading that. What was your reaction to Kobe's comments?
Now, Kobe, before LeBron James, in my lifetime, there have been 4 basketball players that I would say that had just a unbelievable mark on me. And I would say that the first time they come in groups, because I met them all at the same time. That would be Kareem, Magic, and Isaiah Thomas, a friend of the show. Because of my brother and his relationships, I was able to meet them. These guys, tremendous basketball players, all of them champions, all of them very, very different in what their goals and what they wanted to do and how they were going to go about it. And then after that, High school, Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan and I, relatively the same age, went to high school basketball camp together. So Michael Jordan had the lasting impression on me over all basketball. Then it was Kobe Bryant, who I thought was going to be the next Michael Jordan, like a lot of people. You would agree, right?
A lot of people, most primarily Kobe Bryant, thought he was going to be the next Michael Jordan.
Right, but I do remember late in Kobe's career where he talked about potentially going to other teams and playing for another team outside of the Lakers. And it wasn't championship aspirations. He didn't want to play with the Lakers anymore. And if you look at the last several years with the Lakers, with him being hurt and them being at the basement of the NBA, maybe he forgot that. I mean, I didn't forget. Kobe is a great champion. But I know Kobe's whole story. And sometimes when you get out of your profession and then you start having critiques, sometimes you're absent of what your career was really like. Now,
what you call revisionist history.
Yeah, and no one, I mean, just because you thought of championships, that doesn't make someone else a lesser champion, because LeBron and what he has to do being from Northeast Ohio is totally different than Kobe growing up with his dad being a professional basketball player.
But we should also clarify, this quote is not about LeBron's next decision. This quote was in a story about this year and them making the finals again and not winning. It was Kobe was one of 8 basketball players from the Isaiah Thomas you talked about, the original Isaiah Thomas, Vince Carter, Chauncey Billups, Paul Pierce, who doesn't even like LeBron because of their history with Cleveland and Boston and then Miami and Boston, all talking about LeBron's run in Cleveland, the 3 titles, and then, of course, the 6 finals losses over the course of his career. And that's where Kobe said, you got to find a way to win. That's where Kobe engages in some of the most intellectually dishonest revisionist history you are going to find. Where Kobe says, the only thing that ever mattered to me my entire career was championships. Well, yeah, except for the time that you made the Lakers pick between you and Shaq. When
Yes.
Shaq was the best player in the world. When the year after they chose you over Shaq, Shaq finished second in the MVP. And the year after that, he won a title. What were you doing those 2 years? Well, you were so focused on championships, you missed the playoffs in 2005. In 2006, you blew a 3-1 lead in the first round. And in 2007, you lost in 5 in the first round. What did you do after 2007? Oh, you demanded a trade on Stephen A. Smith's radio show. You then found some goofballs in a parking lot and on video trashed your teammates Andrew Bynum, your GM Mitch Kupchak for not making a trade. Like, all those things happened. We all remember those things happening. And so I will give Kobe the benefit of the doubt on this. This has been a tough 24 months for Kobe Bryant since LeBron beat the 73-win Warriors. Because Kobe always wanted the discussion to be Kobe and Michael. And the discussion he got was Kobe and Duncan.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with that. There's a legitimate...
I mean, if you look at their career.
Yes. Both got 5 rings.
Yeah, I mean, how many times they played against each other?
Yep.
The organization, San Antonio, and the Lakers. Like, that's a great comparison.
And you can even include Shaq in that. If you want to have a 3-way, you could I would go Duncan, Kobe, Shaq. If you want to argue Shaq, Kobe, Duncan. If you want to argue Kobe, those are all legitimate arguments. From that era, Kobe, Duncan, and Shaq, you can rank them however. But that's the debate he got. And LeBron is getting the Michael Jordan debate. But for Kobe Bryant, I just want to remind the audience, just take LeBron this year in the playoffs compared to the best individual years Kobe ever had and put them side by side. So on the right-hand side is just what LeBron did this year. On the left-hand side is Kobe's career highs in the playoffs in points, rebounds, assists, and 40-point games. LeBron, you take the best Kobe ever was and take just this LeBron year, and it's not close. So for Kobe to use this opportunity to say this is a postseason where LeBron's lack of championship medal showed, what Kobe's doing is showing his own unfortunate insecurity about where he ranks in the all-time greats, because 8th or 9th isn't good enough for him, evidently.
Chris, you're a guy that really says championships matter, and that's why we talk about the LeBron versus Michael Jordan all the time. But for a guy like Kobe, who's got 5, do you put him and LeBron in equal category as far as, you know, legendary superstars, even though he's got more championships, but obviously less?
Yeah, I haven't seen them that
stats.
far apart, and, man, I grew up loving Kobe. But LeBron's stats have overwhelmed Kobe in where he was. And Kobe getting hurt at the end of his career, that hurt his legacy. Not only as far as the numbers that he's absent of, but how he did it and the fashion for which he did it. He demanded the max salary in the team that had no flexibility, so they had no chance to win. So the Kobe Bryant we saw for the last 3 seasons was not a great Kobe Bryant. LeBron's numbers, if you know basketball, you know that LeBron is too efficient as a basketball player compared to Kobe. Now, I hate getting into these discussions because we always have to try to tear down someone's career to be able to discuss it. But I don't believe you have to do that. Kobe did have a great career. It
was unbelievable.
But you can't argue about LeBron's efficiency, LeBron's rebounding, assists, all those things. I mean, if you want to talk about just scoring, then you're going to still give it to LeBron because how LeBron scored, he was more efficient doing it.
Well, and the other thing is, and this is I agree with you that too often when we compare players, and I try not to do this in the LeBron-Jordan debate. I try not to talk about where Jordan wasn't great. I just talk about where LeBron is excellent, or at least I attempt to. But the reason that I don't mind pointing out some of Kobe's flaws here is because he opened this door. I implore everyone to read this Howard Beck article.
Yeah, that goes on to say a lot.
Every single person quoted in this article they're asked about, what about LeBron's record? And they're like, well, man, Jerry West is the logo. What about the championships? Well, if it's all about championships, why don't we talk more about Russell? Everyone is measured, except for Kobe, who, when he's asked about how much do you value making 8 straight finals, Kobe scoffs and says, I think you know how I feel about that. When he asks about why they didn't win a championship this year, he says, you have to find a way to win a championship. Kobe, America needs to be reminded of this. Here's how many forget championship, playoff series Kobe Bryant won in his career without an all-NBA big man, either Shaq or Powell. 0. 3 years in Kobe's career in the heart of his prime, ages 26, 27, 28. He didn't have Shaq, he didn't have Powell. He missed the playoffs once, got bounced in the first round twice. Kobe had to deal with a teammate situation similar to what LeBron dealt with this year, similar to what LeBron dealt with in 2007. And by the LeBron standard, he failed miserably. So now I don't believe he failed because teammates matter. But Kobe opining in this article about how you make your teammates better, that's comedy. That's comedy coming from this player who, as great as he was, that was one of his weaknesses.
Yes.
And LeBron's, as whatever you think of LeBron, his greatest strength is that.
At least that's what his teammates say.
That's what his teammates say.
And if you polled Kobe's teammates compared to LeBron's teammates, I think those numbers would be overwhelming.
See, if the Kobe's quote was, LeBron needed to take 35 shots, I don't care if he had a broken hand, at least you'd be like, okay, that is what Kobe would have done.
Yes.
That is, but when the quote is, LeBron's got to make his teammates better.
He's got to do less. He actually said he's got to do less.
He's got to do less. Like, that's the part that, to me, resonates as so hollow.
Right, and if I'm asking Kobe these questions, I would have asked Kobe about Magic Johnson. And I wonder what he would have said. Because Magic won 5. Lost 4. Yep. You know, would he have told Magic that you have to find a way to win? Or no, because Rob Pelinka, works there under Magic, and that's Kobe's agent. And I'm sure that he would have said some different things. So sometimes people, they don't remember it the same way. But if you look at, if you're a basketball fan, all those things that Nick and I talk about were true about Kobe Bryant.
Well, Kobe went on to say a number of other things, which we will get to over the course of the next couple hours. But coming up, is it possible the Warriors are actually looking to get even better? That is next. First things first.
At Buffalo Wild Wings, we'll admit that we often go overboard with our limited time offerings. We just can't help ourselves. Take our new signature sampler. For $15, you get wings and 3 shareable options, like fried pickles or cheese curds. Then there's our aptly named over-the-top nachos, a literal mountain of crispy tortilla chips loaded with your choice of pulled pork or honey barbecue chicken, corn, jalapenos, and more. Then top it all off with our new platinum margarita. Go overboard with us today at Buffalo Wild Wings. Wings, beer, sports, Available for a limited time while supplies last. Please drink responsibly.
We're going to get to rumors of another Warriors weapon, if it's possible, in just a second. But first, Kansas commit Quentin Grimes with the steal and throwdown. What's up, Nick?
Listen, my son played with this young man 3 years ago in Houston. He is such a quality kid. He was playing on one of the best AAU teams in the country as a sophomore in high school and was clearly the best. He is a future NBA player, Quentin Grimes.
By the way, that team, they went on a 45-0 run to start the game. Moving on track and field, this is 19-year-old Juan Miguel Echeverria, who, by the way, I thought actually broke his leg when he landed. He didn't. He had a 29-foot long jump. That's 8.83 meters, Nick.
See?
Longest jump since 95.
That's what they call jumping out the gym. I mean, jumping out the pit.
He jumped out of the long jump pit.
Now, that's an amazing leap right there.
He jumped so far, he made it dangerous.
That's
you were
what
right
I said.
to be worried that he might have broken his leg.
That's what I thought, that he landed in the end. I mean,
That's
8.83 meters?
That's crazy.
It's insane.
Oh, this is not
Finally, college baseball. Florida's Austin Langworthy hits the improbable walk-off home run off the outfielder's glove. Oh, he's going to remember that one. Gators advance to the College World Series.
Not good, man. Not good, Auburn Tigers. Nick, haven't been to the College World Series since 1997.
Really?
Over 7,000 days this guy's been waiting for this opportunity.
Oh, my. Well, he was probably not born. Or maybe he was
It's right
1
on
year
that.
old.
It's
It's
right-
right on the
it's-
cusp. Man, and this would have been a big upset. Florida, I believe, to be the #1 team in the country.
Yep.
Auburn could have... Oh, that's brutal. That's not quite Conseco level, but that's brutal.
Back to the Golden State Warriors now, who are apparently obsessed with having all the talent in the NBA, not just, say, most of the talent in the NBA. Last week, they won their 3rd title in 4 seasons. This week, they want more. The Warriors are reportedly interested in acquiring Anthony Davis from the Pelicans the same way they used to be interested in acquiring Kevin Durant. That seemed to work out. Nick, what do you think? Should the Warriors actually consider trading for AD? Because they'd have to trade for AD.
All right, so I want the audience to understand a few things. Tim Cavalcami's been talking about this for a long time, okay? He's the reporter that spoke on this for The Athletic. He covers the team up in the Bay Area.
He used to cover me in Philadelphia.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
He's a really good journalist.
He really is.
And he's not talking about them doing it right now. He's talking about them doing it potentially a year from now is the most likely if they were to do it. And anyone that says that's laughable, it's insane, it would never happen, those are the same things being said about the Warriors going out and getting Kevin Durant. Now, that was cleaner because that was a player choosing to go there via free agency rather than via a trade. But could they make this happen? Well, I mean, yeah, like Draymond Green and Andre Iguodala's contracts match up. You could add them, you could trade them. If they're trying to sign Klay Thompson to an extension, they could then flip him. Like a lot of things to where this absolutely could happen. I would be careful if I'm Golden State in trying to have this be out there while I'm also potentially trying to sell Klay and Draymond on signing extensions now, which will cost them an enormous amount of money. If Klay and Draymond sign extensions early and forego true unrestricted free agency, the Warriors are limited in what they can pay them, as opposed to them hitting free agency. They could stay with the Warriors, but for Klay it would cost them about $80 million signing early. Draymond around the same. So I'd be very careful in letting it be out there. We might want to trade for Anthony Davis while we're also going to Klay and or Draymond saying, re-up now. Let's lock into you now. But I wouldn't put anything past the Warriors. They're not worried about the competitive balance of the league. They're not worried about the ratings of the NBA Finals. If they have the 2nd and 3rd best players in the world, if they can acquire the 4th, I'm sure they'll try to.
The Warriors haven't been relevant that much the last 20 years. And now we would say that this franchise, one of the most popular in all of sports, why would you give that up? So when people say, well, why wouldn't you be looking? I would think that in a couple years, they're going to be looking at adding a star, because that's their formula. Let's get as many stars together as possible, especially as long as we have, especially I think around Steph as a shooter. Let's put some other players. That's how the Lakers continued their dynasty for a long time. That's how the Celtics did it for a long time. So I'm not surprised at all. If it's not him, it's going to be someone else. So I'm not shocked at all, because in the NBA, now once you get a taste of it, and with them winning 3 out of the last 4, how long do they keep? Because as a player that's won 3 in Klay and Draymond, how much more do I sacrifice? I mean, because what's the difference between 3 and 4. Really not that much of a difference. But you talking about me taking $50 to $80 million less? Now, these players, I'm sure that they're looking at what's best for them, because it becomes hard to get people to continue to sacrifice, and it's going to be hard to keep this team totally together. So I'm not shocked at all they would be looking at a plan like Anthony Davis.
So you asked the question. I'd love you to answer it. Why would you take a team that's really at the beginning, if KD wins another one, of their dynasty, that has all the pieces in place, and say, well, let's try to tweak it a little bit. Maybe we can make it even better. This is a team that won during the regular season, that kind of skated through the postseason. Why would you want to tinker with that?
For the same reason that they took a 73-win team that had already won a title and said, we will totally revamp our bench. We will get rid of Harrison Barnes because we can add one of the very best players alive. Listen, if they can do this, I'm sure they will look into it. I want to make this very clear. I tried to lay out very lawyerly almost how it could happen, why I believe it's plausible. It would be terrible for the league. Like, there is no getting around that, and it would be... Would
it be terrible for league? Because you are going to give up 2 of those 4 superstars, most likely.
If you have the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th best players in basketball, then good night, good luck. It is
regardless
not an all-star
if you
team,
give up
it's
Clay
an all-NBA team.
I mean, we didn't know where the NBA was going to be 2 years from. In 2016, we didn't know we'd be here. So for us to think we're going to know where it's going to be in 2020, that's going to be hard to do. It's going to be hard to keep Golden State together. But I believe that they'll try to get another star in the next 3 years.
But the thing is this, though, and this is, for me, this is the problem that I had logically with people that endorsed the Kevin Durant move, is once you say you have no responsibility to the competition of the league, once you say you have no responsibility to trying to go out and beat these guys, once it was okay for Kevin Durant to do it, of course it's okay for Anthony Davis to do it. Kevin Durant's team was better, and Kevin Durant is better than Anthony Davis was. Kevin Durant's team was closer than Anthony Davis's team. Kevin Durant had better teammates than Anthony Davis has. Once it's okay for him to go, then it's okay for everyone to go. Then it's okay for LeBron to go. It's okay for Anthony Davis to go. It's okay for the All-NBA team to all be literally on one NBA team. I'm not okay with any of it. I don't like any of it. But it
wouldn't be okay for the league. And I think moving forward, like, the league will consider those things. Golden State has a rare opportunity to build on what they have, and that's probably going to be around KD and Steph. With Draymond and them, how many sacrifices are they going to be able to make so that they can improve? Because one thing that we've lost in this whole conversation, Golden State was down. They had the 2nd-best record this year in the NBA during the regular season. They were down to the Houston Rockets, and Chris Paul got hurt. All right? So we're sitting here acting like, oh, there's no competition in the NBA. Well, they were down and Chris Paul got hurt. They wouldn't have this championship if Chris Paul plays in one of those games.
Also, Kobe said just pass the ball more, and then the Cavs could have won, so they could have done that too. But we should also factor in, when we talk about this again, maybe AD doesn't want to go through what Kevin Durant just went through. Maybe Anthony Davis wants to figure out how to win on his own without having to join. If you can't beat him, join him.
People don't think about Anthony Davis the way they thought about Kevin Durant when he was getting ready to leave. And he didn't have the firepower Russell Westbrook going against. So people, they wouldn't be upset. Yes.
Absolutely right, Sid.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, let's take a break. Coming up, a prominent Cav thinks Cleveland can win a title without LeBron. And it's not LeBron. That's next on First Things First. The 2018 FIFA World Cup is coming to Fox and FS1. Every match live and over 300 hours of coverage. Oh, this is going to be good. The world's biggest sporting event is just 2 days away, right here on Fox and FS1. All right, we are going viral here on First Things First. Ty Cohn of Mounds View High in Minnesota striking out his longtime friend Jack Kochen to advance to the state championship. They grew up together and played on the same little league team. Super nice moment as he embraces his friend, hugs him instead of celebrating with his teammates. He knows how he feels. It gave me the chills when I saw this yesterday. It was just a really sweet thing.
You said that was in Minnesota?
Minnesota nice. I'm telling you, they're the nicest people in the world.
Look at that.
I'm not surprised at all. Great show of just feeling for another guy. You grow up together. Don't know if my buddies, I don't know if I'd have done that, one of my buddies. I don't know.
That was.
I ain't grow up in Minnesota.
That right.
Spent a lot of
Think
time.
about it.
You're Ohio mean instead of Minnesota nice.
No, if I pitched to my best friend Marnie, I would probably go over if I struck her out and be like, Marn, I'm really, I'm really sorry the way season ended. We should go, we'll go to Target afterwards. We'll hang
high school?
out. Yeah.
In high school?
I'm
like, hey, Dwight, eat that. Take that with you. You know you can't handle my stuff. Eat that, D.
Right.
Why'd you go with Dwight? Why didn't you go with your friend who went with the funny name?
Toogie? Because we might have to fight. We might have to fight.
Swung on you?
Yeah, Toogie he got a mean left.
Okay.
Time for some stories to start your morning. Kawhi Leonard has been the subject of much drama this season and now this offseason. But according to reports, he is now expected to sign an extension in San Antonio. Boy, reports are the best. CC, would this be the right move for Kawhi?
Yeah, who's turning down $80 million? I've been saying this for a long time. This is the only place he can get the max deal. So it's going to be hard with Popovich for him to leave. We heard the conversation last year with LaMarcus Aldridge. It probably went a lot like that with Kawhi. He's going to be back with San Antonio.
My only question was, throughout this process, given the divorce that the owner is going through, Peter Holt and his wife Juliana, and some of the money involved, would the Spurs commit $215 million to a player? Because when CeCe says 80, it's not an $80 million contract he's talking about. He's talking about an $80 million difference between what the Spurs can offer and what anyone else can offer. Were they going to offer him the full boat Supermax? If they do, it doesn't matter what your endorsement money is. You can't make that money up. Kawhi was upset about
but this is something I found out, Nick. In divorce, she can pay for the other half with her money.
Okay.
You also found out there were 2 houses. Remember that? You can live in 2 houses.
You can live in 2 houses.
Never mind. Former Raptors coach Dwayne Casey has a new job. I don't know. He signed a 5-year deal to become the coach of the Detroit Pistons, replacing Stan Van Gundy. He will try and get the core of Blake Griffin, Andre Drummond, and Reggie Jackson to the playoffs. # hands full. Nick, what do you think? Was this a good hire?
I think it was an excellent hire for the Pistons. I'm not certain it was a great decision for Dwayne Casey. You have a Supermax contract, speaking of Supermax contracts, that's just now kicking in with Blake Griffin. And you have real concerns about how healthy he can be. This is your team moving forward. I thought Dwayne Casey was going to be a hot enough prospect that he could have maybe waited for a better fit. But if you're Detroit, you got to be thrilled. You got the best coach available.
He's dominated the East from a regular season standpoint, so he's very, very familiar. I think Detroit they got a good guy in the hire here. Offensively, you need to work a little bit. We saw them change their defense in Toronto, but this play calling in critical situations, I didn't see it as being elite, even though he is a good coach.
That out of timeout stuff, yep.
All right, moving on to the NFL. Dallas running back Ezekiel Elliott is looking to take on more of a leadership role in year 3. Zeke says, I've definitely been more vocal. That's something I've been focusing on. CC, what do you expect from Ezekiel Elliott this coming season?
Zeke's always been a leader. When he grew up in Illinois, he's a great athlete there. He was a great leader at Ohio State. Urban Meyer tells stories about him and his leadership. Only reason why he wasn't a leader last year was because of the off-the-field issues and the pending suspension. But I expect Zeke to be at the forefront, especially with Des Bryant and Witten being gone. They need Zeke to be a good leader.
Well, that's the thing. Because those 2 guys are gone, Zeke and Dak have to kind of tag team this thing. Obviously, the quarterback's always going to be a de facto leader on the team, but the other guy who's usually a de facto leader is your best player. And so the quarterback and your best player, 2 guys that came in the same draft class, 2 guys who off the field seem to get along very well and be good friends, both of those guys have to take on that responsibility.
All right, sticking with the Cowboys here, Randy Gregory, the defensive end, is expected to meet with NFL officials regarding potential reinstatement. Gregory had 17.5 sacks in his first 2 years, but was suspended all of the 2017 season. Chris, what would it mean for Gregory to be reinstated?
Any team right now, if you can add a player, God bless you,
Thank you,
that can add 10 sacks, and his potential is really off the charts. Add him to that defense in Dallas. They could use another rusher. I'm looking for Randy Gregory to be reinstated, and between him, J.J. Watt, and my man Carson Wentz for Comeback Player of the Year. Watch all 3 of those names, so I'm pulling for the kid.
All right, so just real quick, the off the field. This is a guy you know, is a guy you wrote a letter on his behalf. He had real big issues coming out of school, at the Combine, his first few years. You believe he's in the healthiest place he's been in?
Yes, he's gotten the type of help that you would want to see. It's time for him to be reinstated.
Okay.
All right, finally, Julio Jones says he'll skip Atlanta's mandatory minicamp this week. Jones is seeking a new deal despite having 3 years left on his current contract. CC, what do you make of this? Why is he asking for a new deal with 3 years left?
Well, all that quarterback money started floating around.
And he wanted some.
People started hearing about it. Salary cap, over $175 million, the highest ever. The type of success on the field with the TV deals. That's what Julio Jones, Matty Ice. He said, I mean, I know you guys like Matty Ice, but you guys told me you love me. And you know that Julio feels very, very confident because with 3 years left on his contract. Now, we might hear that for someone who comes in and signs a rookie deal, and they break records and everything. But typically, a guy who was a top 5 pick and then was signed to a monumental deal and then only being not even 2 years into that deal wanting another deal, but it lets the confidence he's got in that organization, that Thomas Dimitroff, the general manager there who runs the day-to-day, that he could get a contract. They love Julio Jones, and it's amazing the perception. They love Julio in Atlanta. Now, they like Odell with the Giants, but with all the other things off the field, if Odell had done the same
thing,
they
would crucify him.
But because people love Julio, he's very little maintenance. He's one of the hardest workers you could ever have as being one of your leaders. That this is going to be interesting. I believe he's going to get a new contract because of the economics and because of the contract they gave Matty Ice.
I'm glad you brought up Odell because it reminded me when I saw this of advice you gave. You gave Odell at some house, very nice house in Los Angeles with the giant dogs outside that scared the hell out of you, that I was sitting there listening to. That Odell, I bet, is thinking back on and wishing he had taken, which was you told him going into last year, listen, man, you only have so much chips to cash in. And I'm paraphrasing, essentially. Mm-hmm. And if you waste them on nonsense, it will cost you money. If you waste your cachet with the organization on foolishness,
non-football stuff,
it's hard for you to then be able to hold their feet to the fire on getting all the money you want. 'Cause
when you need it.
When you need it. So Julio has done the opposite, right? Julio's never cashed in any chips. He's never been a problem, never made any noise, just produced, right? And now he's got 3 years left on a deal. He is skipping a mandatory part of the offseason.
So he's losing money.
And, well, not real money yet. A slight amount, but he goes into training camps when they can really start finding you. But the point is, nobody is really going to hold this against him because he has so much cachet already built up, so much goodwill built up. Conversely, you're right. If Odell did something like this, there would be a totally different reaction. As much as I like Odell, there should be. Like, Julio has bided his time and waited for this moment. Now, will he get the money? I think he probably will. I'm sure the Falcons don't love the idea of setting the precedent of we're going to rip deals up with 3 years left.
Not just the Falcons. What about everyone else in the league? When you have a big-time guy that plays well, a couple of years in and said, well, you know, it happened in Atlanta. I think 3 years in, I got a couple years left. I want a new deal.
Well, this is the thing. You have to be careful looking at other person's business and trying to think your business is the same because it's about perception, how that organization did an organization trade all these draft picks to be able to make you that top pick from Alabama? Typically, you're not going to have that. Do you have the same resume as Julio Jones? It's unless you're Antonio Brown, which he was going to hold out, and he ended up getting a new contract. So you won't have other guys around the league do it because they know that it's a personal situation. We have my man in Seattle, the safety.
Oh, Earl Thomas?
Earl Thomas. He's holding out for a new contract. You think he mentioned Julio? No, he's had a great career, and he's got 1 year left on his deal that Seattle hasn't decided to do. So it's more about your team compared to league-wide.
But we're going to move on in a second. But just quickly, tell me how this plays out. Say he just keeps holding out. So what? He's going to eventually play and then play with a chip on his shoulder for 3 more years?
No. He's too important of a player for them to let him keep holding out. This is the thing. Players get cut with 3 years left on deals all the time, and we call that business. It's rare in the NFL that a player that isn't a quarterback has this type of leverage. We saw Revis have it often, and he exerted it. I applaud players in a league that is so skewed towards management power. If you have the leverage and you can go get your money now, go get your money now.
And the thing about it is, he's not in the position of Odell because he already has a contract. Because right now he has a base salary probably averaging about 11 million over the next 3 years. But he's got his eye on Antonio, who averaged 17 million in his deal. So he's looking for the difference between that 11 and that 17 over the course probably of 3 to 5 years. So it's not a $100 million deal he's looking for.
And he knows, listen, Matt Ryan is not the best quarterback in the NFL. He's the highest paid. Julio might be the best wide receiver in the NFL. He's not the highest paid. He can look at within the team and say, listen, man, y'all found money for him. You're going to find money for me.
Jarvis Landry, Cleveland Browns, I think they gave him $15 million. So Julio's like, I think I need a little bump.
Yeah.
All right. To the Cavaliers now, back to basketball. After losing 3 NBA Finals and 4 seasons with the Cavs. I'm not showing up till I get a new contract. You'll be like, great, we have 27 other people that can fill in.
Dusty, get dressed.
LeBron is now looking to be heading to greener pastures to pursue, well, greener pastures. According to Cavs owner Dan Gilbert, that is not a problem. Gilbert reportedly believes he can build a championship team without LeBron and is, quote, looking forward to trying. On a related note, I can't ice skate, but I'm sure I'll make the NHL next year. Nick, how far are the Cavs from a title without LeBron, distance-wise?
I mean, as far as you can be. That's the answer. They have a terrible salary cap situation. They don't have this surplus of draft picks coming in. In fact, they traded away their own draft pick this year so they could get Jordan Clarkson. That was one of the deals that Dan Gilbert made sure he helped orchestrate. They have the 8th overall pick coming in, and then they have their own draft pick, which I imagine will be very high draft picks for multiple years because the team will be terrible. But it is this mentality that is one of the reasons you're losing LeBron James. Because Dan Gilbert has, for some reason, believed that he's been a big part of this, as opposed to not even a supporting actor, and not even a bit player, just a guy there for the ride. Anybody could have bought the Cavs in 2005, and guess what? They would have, at the very least, had this much success, and a lot of owners, they would have had more success.
Yeah, this is the funny thing about Dan Gilbert, because right now I wouldn't be talking about a championship. I don't know what he thought he was going to gain.
Yeah.
Because, I'm a little bit older than both of you, but my history is just a short history. When LeBron was in Miami, they were the worst in the NBA, right?
Cleveland.
The Cavs were.
Yes.
Yeah. Owned by Dan Gilbert?
Yes.
Or when LeBron left, did Dan Gilbert give his ownership to his son or something? No, he ran the team, right? Now, in his history as an owner, he's never extended a general manager beyond the first contract.
Correct.
So that's not championship basketball. What has he done absent of LeBron when they won the lottery and LeBron happened to be there? Absent of drafting LeBron, what have they done?
Well, and they drafted LeBron before he got there. So, he got that. Listen, Dan Gilbert's on the team for 13 years. 9 of those years, LeBron's been on the team. In those 9 years, they've won 20 playoff series. 4 of those years, LeBron hasn't been on the team. They've won 0 playoff series and gotten the first overall pick 3 times. See how bad they were. First overall pick 3 times. This is comedy, man. This is a super rich guy thinking he's a world conqueror when he's not.
These are the 3 people he's lost in the last 12 months. David Griffin, Kyrie Irving, and LeBron James twice.
Right.
Now, Jenna, I don't know how it is when you get left twice.
Yeah,
I know once is bad, but
never happened.
LeBron leaves you twice, and you're sitting here talking about championships, and everything else that you've experienced without LeBron has been pain and misery. I don't know what he's
like. If there was any doubt, if there was any, I could see maybe a path towards these two reconciling just enough where they could coexist and play. There's not. Dan Gilbert obviously is ready to move on and try to win something without LeBron, and clearly this is a pride thing. LeBron is clearly ready to move on.
Dan Gilbert don't have a choice. And that's his big problem.
Well, that's what,
all right?
He doesn't have a choice
rich.
because he created the foundation whereby LeBron was going to leave.
He's rich. He's made some bad decisions. Him and LeBron, since LeBron's been back, have never been close. And the only chance he had at bringing LeBron back was last year, potentially trading for Paul George. They didn't do it.
Or keeping Kyrie.
And keeping Kyrie.
And maybe they're up in the NBA Finals 3-2 right now. But listen, I just want everyone to know, because the Cavs have, even when LeBron walks, no cap space. Now, maybe LeBron will do him a solid if he does the sign and trade. But if LeBron does not do the sign and trade, here's the Cavs depth chart next year. Point guard, you got George Hill and Jordan Clarkson. George Hill, who was hot and cold all playoffs, mostly cold, and Jordan Clarkson, who had the worst playoff run from a shooting perspective in modern NBA history.
And they're locked in?
They're locked in. I'm talking about guys who are locked in. George Hill, Jordan Clarkson. Your shooting guard position is J.R. Smith and Kyle Korver. Korver will be 38 years old, coming off an NBA Finals where he made 1 3-pointer. The only small...
Rodney Hood's a free agent.
Rodney Hood's a free agent.
There you go.
Only
That's where you're going to get your guy.
forward on the roster is Jetty Osman, my guy.
Jetty's going to get all the playing time you were wishing for this year.
Exactly. You still have Kevin Love, and then your centers are Tristan Kardashian and Ante Zizic. That's who you've got. That's your team next year. And the 8th overall pick, whomever that may be.
They might as well get some minutes for Kanye West. I mean, but this is one of the biggest problems, Jenna, league-wide. Even when LeBron was there the first time, one of the big reasons LeBron left was he couldn't get anyone to come to Cleveland.
Right.
So if you look at the top 20 players in the NBA, now or over the next 5 years,
that's a good point.
Which one of these guys is going to come to Cleveland?
Especially without LeBron.
So that is hard when you can't.
Jenny's like, I got my own team of people that are coming.
I mean, when you can't get the top talent to be able to come to Cleveland, it becomes hard to be thinking about championships.
You bought the NBA team that, by dumb luck, was closest geographically to the birthplace of the greatest or second greatest player ever. You squandered it. You blew it. You lost him. He graciously came back. You squandered it. You blew it. You're going to lose him again.
He got broken up with twice.
It's one of the worst ownership gaffes in modern sports history. He did it twice, and now he's talking out the side of his mouth about winning a championship. It is laughable.
Let's face it, we've all dated a guy like that. Coming up, how hard will it be for the Eagles? Let's keep going.
Neither. We've all dated a girl like that, Jenna. Quit lying to America.
Yeah. We're back after this. Moving on to LeBron James and day 3 of LeBron Watch, the classic drama where he will end up next season. It's a 14-part miniseries, so let's all strap in and get ready to go. Some people are saying Houston, some are saying Philly, some are saying the Celtics, but Vegas is saying the favorite right now is Los Angeles. Lakers are now even money to sign LeBron James this offseason. Doug, I'll start with you. Are the Lakers the best fit for LeBron James in free agency?
Wow. That is I'm trying to answer the question, right? Like, okay. I think he goes to L.A., but I don't know if there is a great fit.
Okay.
Like that's really, I think, why you're seeing his group reach for, well, maybe Golden State, well, maybe San Antonio, well, maybe Boston. It's because there's no, like, hey, everything works out perfectly. But, look, this is what the Lakers do. The Lakers take a guy who's a star elsewhere and make him a star at the end of his career in Los Angeles. It happened with Wilt. It happened with Kareem. I mean, if you even want to say Pau Gasol had his greatest success there, there's a history of this happening. It happened with Shaquille O'Neal.
Sure.
So I do think that Los Angeles is ultimately his home, and it's the best possible option for him outside of Cleveland.
I don't think LA is the best option. I do think it's interesting that Vegas has them as the favorites. More on that.
Yeah, I'm going to interrupt you just a second now. We've got some breaking news from the World Cup. For more now, we're going to send it back out to Rob Stone and Alexi Lalas live from Moscow.
All right, Jenna, thank you. The iconic St. Basil's Cathedral right behind us. We are in the middle of Red Square, Kremlin right over my right shoulder, and we are just minutes away from the vote to take place to find out who will be the host nation or nations for the 2026 FIFA World Cup. Again, the 2018 FIFA World Cup kicks off tomorrow on Fox. Your host country, Russia, set to take on Saudi Arabia. We have a preview show tonight at 7 Eastern on FS1. But the big news right now, outside of Spain firing their manager one day before the World Cup starts, is what's taking place live right now at the Moscow Expo Center, just a few miles away from us and really the center of Moscow right now. They are moments away, Lexi, from voting for either Morocco or the United Bid, which would include the United States, Mexico, and Canada. Real quick, why is this so important for the United States?
Well, as I mentioned, I think that this can be a seminal moment. It can be a moment that changes a generation. We know what the culture is in all three of these countries, but in particular in the United States, what the soccer culture is in 2018. Think of what it's going to be in 2026. Think of what it was in 1994 and all of the significant benefits on and off the field that resulted in the Men's World Cup in 1994. You can do that, and you can do that with an injection. But it's not a panacea, but it is a hell of an injection to give to a country, to a culture, and to a sport.
I want to talk about the vote real quick. For the first time ever, it is one nation, one vote, simple majority, transparency. Every nation who they voted for will be out publicly as soon as the Congress closes. The magic number that we're working with right now, that is slightly fluid, is 104 votes. You talk to the U.S. Soccer President Carlos Cordero, and he'll tell you there is a path to victory for this United Bid. Again, for the first time ever, there's no more executive committee voting on who will host the World Cup. It is every voting member nation gets one vote. You need a simple majority to win that bid on the first vote. It could go to a second. You're looking live right now at the United Bid contingent, and the voting is starting right now. Nervous moments right now in Moscow. It's an electronic vote, so it is going to happen instantaneously. Again, we never got a final number of the nations voting. We think it's 206, meaning a magic number of 104. So voting taking place. Remember, the 2026 World Cup, the first to expand to 48 countries, meaning 80 matches, over 1,100 players. The United Bid promising $14 billion in revenues, $11 billion in profit for FIFA. The infrastructure is there. Morocco has a lot of work to do. They were deemed a high risk due to their lack of infrastructure by the FIFA Evaluation Committee, but these nations, Lexi, are voting the way they want to, not the way they have been instructed, at least through how the tours have taken place.
The results are ready, and I'm giving back the floor to FIFA President to announce the winning bidder.
Thank you very much, Secretary General. So we have a winner for the 2026 FIFA World Cup. The member associations of Canada, Mexico, and USA have been selected by the FIFA Congress to host the 2026 FIFA World Cup. Thank you.
That's a big one.
Dear delegate, ladies and gentlemen, silence in the room, please.
I would like to ask now the representatives of the United Bid to come on stage, please, and the president of CONCACAF, please.
Well, it has been a rough couple months for U.S. soccer. The men's team failing to qualify for the World Cup this summer here in Russia. That was some much-needed news, not just for America, but for North America. And you see the United Bid, the relief, the amount of hours, the travel that they've put in, the millions that they've invested over the course of the last couple weeks to try and secure this bid. This is a game-changing moment for soccer in the States.
You know, I'm a cynical, grumpy old guy, and I think back to 1994, to what happened. This is awesome. This is awesome for all three countries. This is awesome, not just for the sport. and not just for the future of the sport on the field, but off the field, and the culture and the significance of this joint bid, all of the hard work and all the men and women that worked so hard for so many years to make this happen. And as I said in the start, this is also this light post, this 2026 moment that we can work towards. And we're coming into a World Cup here. There's so much going on here. We're sitting here about to get ready to televise a World Cup that doesn't have a United States team, doesn't have a Canada team there. This is a wonderful message to come on the air with. We're going to have wonderful games in this World Cup, but man, oh man, to be able to look to 2026, it warms the cockles of my heart. That is awesome. Man.
I'm not sure you would be here without World Cup 1994.
No. I lived the power, and we get to do it again, and damn, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, you heard yells throughout the complex here on Red Square. Some of them were you and me, my friend. So, yes, here's what's still to come in the World Cup future for us. The Men's World Cup kicks off. Oh, by the way, tomorrow, my friend, the Women's World Cup.
I should have recovered by then.
We've got a location already penciled in Paris for next summer. Qatar in 2022, the Women's World Cup still to come, and in 2026, the World Cup coming back to North America, the U.S., Canada, Mexico, victorious.
All right, guys, thank you so much. So there you have it, the United bid.
That's awesome.
Will be hosting the World Cup in 2026.
But honestly, had we been beaten out by Monaco?
Would not have been great. Would not have been great.
Morocco's a great country.
Morocco,
We'll still call it a win, Doug.
But here's the thing. Reason why
1 over 16.
I think here's the reason why it's great. Even if you're like, I'm probably not going to travel to one of the games or anything like that. Is having the World Cup in your general time zones makes following it so much easier. And so that's awesome. And for the United States, like Alexi said when he was getting choked up, this was not making this World Cup was obviously a very low moment for U.S. soccer. You now have, it's not only making the 2022 World Cup, but we're going to be the hosts in 8 years. Can you compete for an actual champ? Can you make the quarterfinals? Can you make the semifinals in 8 years? That's awesome.
Well, and I think also it's like message received. Qatar obviously did not go over well. We're like, man, something's up. And they expanded the field because I think they want us to be a part of the rest of the world. And now we are. We'll be a host. Hopefully be gracious. Hopefully we'll get the finals. And hopefully in L.A., selfishly, in the new stadium.
So everything's worked out the way you wanted it to.
Honestly, this is an awesome moment.
We haven't hosted it since '94. And Canada and Mexico obviously are hosting as well.
Yeah, whatever.
United bid. But the whole thing, it's great.
Alexi called this a moment that changes the generation. So we shall see. Again, the FIFA World Cup kicks off tomorrow. So we look forward to that. Coming up next, can Tiger Woods win his first major in nearly a decade at Shinnecock? That's next. First things first. That's Time for Stories, brought to you by the unexpected energy of ExxonMobil. Browns embattled receiver Josh Gordon has some high expectations for Cleveland's receiving core next season. He said he, Jarvis Landry, and the rest of Cleveland's receivers should be considered the best receiving core in the league. Nick, how far off is Josh Gordon here?
If Josh Gordon is healthy and the Josh Gordon that he was pre all the suspensions.
What year was that?
We're talking 4 years ago. Okay. I understand that.
Yes.
But Corey Coleman's a good number 3.
Sure.
Jarvis Landry should be a number 2, even though he's paid like a number 1. And Josh Gordon has the ability to be a great number 1. We saw that with a terrible quarterback situation last time he played. And they drafted Antonio Callaway. I understand what he's saying. They're not there yet, but their upside and potential is equal to any team in the league.
Yeah, just stay eligible to play, Josh Gordon, right?
Sure.
And let's see the performance on the field. But I will say this, look, if Baker Mayfield is going to succeed in the NFL, he needs a stellar wide receiving core, okay? He can do all the things, the intangible things. It's the tangibles that's missing, right? The arm strength, the size, the speed. He needs those guys to pick him up. If that all comes together, they got a chance.
They got some talent.
And they do have, they do have a good offensive coach. So the one thing he can do is coach offense, coach quarterback.
And their OC, Todd Haley's really good as well.
Also, they can't do worse than they did last year.
That's true.
To the NBA now, according to reports, Kawhi and the Spurs are nearing the healing stage between the two parties. You know what heals all wounds? $219 million.
That does heal a lot of wounds.
Also, Doug, Neosporin. Doug, do you expect Kawhi to sign an extension in San Antonio?
And not Bastatrasin? I go Bastatrasin.
You mean Bastatrasin?
Is it Bastatrasin?
I don't know
yeah.
what you guys are talking
It's Bastatrasin, Doug.
Is he signing an extension, Doug?
Of course he's signing an extension. It's a lot like LaMarcus Aldridge. They wanted to get rid of LaMarcus Aldridge, or LaMarcus Aldridge wanted to be traded, and then all of a sudden now LaMarcus Aldridge is the greatest Spur ever. Man, he really bought in. That's what they do in San Antonio, right? They mold you. They're not letting him go. He's a top 3 player in the league when he's healthy. Does he have the problem with shutting it down when he's not 100% right? He does. But when he's 100% right, he's really good. And outside LaMarcus Aldridge, I struggle to find them finding another free agent to sign in San Antonio. He's going to sign for all that money.
Listen, this is a risk for San Antonio, but it's a risk they have to take. They could have played hardball. They could offer him 5 years, $195 and still be offering him $50+ million more than anybody else.
Right.
But then you run the risk of him feeling insulted, of him saying, you know what, I'll take the enormous financial haircut to go elsewhere where I'm really wanted, because he does not have the reputation of a guy that will play through things. How you feel about paying him $40+ million a year, I get why you're squeamish, but you have no choice. He is without question one of the 5 best players in the sport. They don't have a great history of attracting guys to come play in San Antonio.
Right.
You can't let them walk for nothing.
Yeah, the interesting thing is going to be the healing process with him and some of the other players. You know, Tony Parker saying my injury was 100% worse.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's tough.
All right, to the Raptors now. Toronto signed Nick Nurse to replace Dwayne Casey as head coach. Nurse had been an assistant under Casey for the last 5 years. More importantly, he once coached Doug Gottlieb.
That's right.
Doug, what do you think? You think that's why he got the job?
Totally. They called me. I'm like, dude, hire that guy right away. I'll take credit for it.
Like that.
He's a really good coach in the D League before it became the G League. This is an interesting one because it feels like everybody wins, right? Dwayne Casey gets fired, but he gets a new 5-year deal with the Pistons. Granted, the Pistons aren't currently what the Raptors are. But, dude, you hit refresh and get 5 more years of new money and a fresh start. And it appears as though they needed a new message from a new messenger, even if the general theme of things stays the same.
But do you get that new message if you hire a guy that's been there 5 years? If you hire one of the lead assistants for Dwayne Casey? Listen, I don't know Nick Nurse the way you do, but I have read before I knew you had played for him. People think highly of him in the league. I also didn't think Dwayne Casey should have been fired. I would have traded DeRozan before I fired Dwayne Casey, but that ship has sailed. But if you wanted a new message, you typically go outside the family. That's my only question here. Like, did they really get a new message?
I think here's what happens. And if you look at when Dwayne Casey was fired, it was after the exit interviews, right? So it's pretty obvious that when they called some of those players in, those players are like, look, everybody thinks it's us and we can't get over LeBron, but there's some things that he's not doing that we don't think is up to snuff in the playoffs. And when they looked around and they interviewed people from outside of Toronto, they said, hey, the answer is right here on our bench. And I'm sure it saved them some money as well to do it.
Sure. All right, back to one of our top stories now. Day 3 of the LeBron Watch, the classic drama of where he will end up next season. It's like a 14-part miniseries, so let's get ready to do this. People are saying
well, this is the 3rd incarnation of the 14-part miniseries.
Yeah, it is, so we've got a bunch more to go. Some people are saying Philly, others are saying Boston, but Vegas is saying the favorite right now, the Lakers.
What is Delaware saying, since you can gamble in Delaware as well?
Lakers are now even money to sign LeBron James this offseason. Nick, what do you think? Are the Lakers the best fit for LeBron?
No. They're not the best fit. Now, that doesn't mean he won't go there. But the idea that, LeBron can't go to Philly, they don't have enough shooting. Well, the Lakers were the 2nd worst three-point shooting team in the league last year. They were a bottom 5 catch-and-shoot three-point shooting team. If he goes to Los Angeles, he's bringing Paul George with him. Well, that's nice. That's one piece. That's one guy that can shoot. And if you're talking about beating the Warriors, I get it. You Paul George, he can guard KD as well as nobody can really guard KD, much like nobody can really guard LeBron. But Paul George is long and athletic and can at least give him some problems. I understand that part of it. But I think the best fit is Philly or Boston. And people with Philly, they say, he and Ben Simmons have a redundant skill set. That's only looking at one side of the ball. Embiid plus Simmons plus LeBron instantly becomes the best defense in basketball. Instantly. Becomes the best defense in the NBA. And while you don't have a lot of shooting with that lineup, what you do have is size in a league that's going small, athletic size, switchable size, and movable size. So I think Philly's a better fit. But I don't know if this is going to be about fit. I think LeBron might be thinking, man, I just took this team to the finals, where my second best player is Kevin Love. And by the way, game 6 and 7 against Boston didn't even have him. And we should have won game 1. We were right there in Game 3. I played with a broken hand the last week. So how much does it matter who's on my team as long as I'm on my team?
Well, and as long as you're in the East as well, right? Now, I do think that this is not a stationary target. The East is going to be better next year. If he doesn't go to Philly, we would think will add a piece or two with that money from J.J. Redick. Boston's going to is coming. Let's start with your Boston thing, which you plug him in. I'm assuming you're moving Kyrie Irving, okay? Kyrie. Which obviously would not sit well with Kyrie Irving, right? Like, you finally got away from LeBron, now you get traded. But if I'm Boston, you're splitting tens. You have a winning hand. Okay, why run the risk of upsetting the apple cart when you already have a winning hand?
Because you get a better player, and you would get a player that's locked in. You don't know that you're going to have Kyrie more than 1 year. You don't know the health of Kyrie's knee. You don't know how much better you are with Kyrie due to his defensive deficiencies. And you have a guy that, you know who you want Jason Tatum to become? LeBron. So you have him learn from LeBron. Like, for all those reasons, I don't think it's splitting tens, but go ahead.
My point is, I think Boston is right there to be the best team in the East. So, you still haven't even seen him with Gordon Hayward, let alone with Gordon Hayward and Kyrie Irving yet. As for Philadelphia, again, I think you're looking at a stationary target. Remember, LeBron is not moving. He's smartly taking plays off defensively. You're depending upon Joel Embiid to be healthy. You're depending upon either Ben Simmons or LeBron James to play without the ball for the first time in their career, and they are losing some shooting from last year. Here's the thing with L.A. What they've done is they've gutted the back end of their roster. They've allowed it to, when he sits down with them, they can say, look, we had Paul George and you got Lonzo, you got Kuzma, and then let's pick some of the other pieces that you want to add. I think it's more of a blank slate. Are any of them perfect fits? No. The East is an easier path, although the Celtics should be much more competitive if he went to Philadelphia. I think L.A., we look at the West as so dominant, but Houston's going to have to remake themselves with some contracts. And Golden State appears to be, maybe in the last year, we already talked about the Draymond contract and the Durant contract. And again, the point you made is probably the best one, which is there is a confidence/arrogance to LeBron. He goes to Miami, they go to the finals right away. He goes to Cleveland, they stink, they go to the final right away. So we can sit here and go, hey, if he goes to the West, he's not going to go to the finals. But you're LeBron James. Everywhere you've gone. Every team you face, you've gone there. If you get other players around him, why should he believe that he can't win with the Los Angeles Lakers?
Even money now that that LeBron's going to the Lakers, how much will this change back and forth before a decision?
What I'll say is this. If we looked at the last 2 times LeBron changed teams, there was the overwhelming favorite on this day, a few days after the season ended, is not where he went.
Oh, interesting.
Right? So, like, the overwhelming favorite the first time was he's staying in Cleveland, and then I think after that it was Chicago. The second time it was he's staying in Miami. Like, people were really Miami gained more, Cleveland gained more momentum as the offseason draw on. But right when the season ended, people were like, he's not going back to Cleveland, back to Dan Gilbert. So the fact that the Lakers are the overwhelming favorite right now it's not a sure thing.
Well, listen, like, he gave us some clues about Miami last time. Okay, and here's the clues that we have this time. Right, he said family is important. He said that his life has changed since the last 2 decisions.
That his son's getting an input.
Right, and so they have 2 homes in Los Angeles. They have obviously a huge spread in Akron. And I think if you read the tea leaves that everybody's reading the NBA, that his family wants to be in a home. It's no disrespect to Houston. It's no disrespect to Philly or to Boston or to San Antonio or Timbuktu.
You think it's one of those 2?
I do.
And I think Cleveland's been totally eliminated, which would then mean if Doug's right and I'm right, which is unlikely, but that it's just Los Angeles.
It's unlikely that you're right or that we agree.
No, that we would both be correct on something we're seeing slightly differently.
All right, let's move on. Time for your U.S. Open golf headlines, brought to you by DraftKings. Tiger Woods getting ready for his 20th U.S. Open, his first, though, since 2015. Tiger hasn't won a major in 10 years and is in the midst of a very up-and-down season. That's a technical term, Doug. He's struggled at times with his putting, his iron play, and his driving, but only those 3, so we're good. He's hoping for it all to come together, though, this weekend.
He's great driving.
Golf is always frustrating. There's always something that isn't quite right, and that's where we as players have to make the adjustments. And you know, if you've seen other tournaments I've played in this year, there's always something. And hopefully that, this is one of those weeks where I put it all together and even it out, and, we'll see what happens.
All right, Nick, does Tiger have to win this weekend for this big comeback he's mounted to come full circle?
Listen, for the comeback to actually be a full comeback, he's got to win a major. That's period, point blank. And we've seen, you mentioned he has struggled in every part of his game, but just different weekends. So there was a weekend where he had 59 out of 59 putts within 10 feet, which is insane. Then there was a weekend a few weeks ago where he couldn't putt at all, but his driving was excellent. So he hasn't had all three come together.
And that's why he said, I'd love to see it all come together this week.
But in 2013, Tiger Woods was PGA Tour Player of the Year.
Yep.
He won He won 5 times more than anyone on tour, led the tour in money, and nobody thought he was back. We're not saying, is Tiger back to 2013 form? No. We're talking about, is Tiger back to the championship form the last time he won the U.S. Open, when he did it on a flipping broken leg and a partially torn ACL. That is how we're going to judge this guy. He will be back when he gets his 15th major. When we start saying, can he catch Jack? So, yes, in order for him to actually be back, the Valspar doesn't matter. The Arnold, nothing matters other than these 4 times a year that he has a chance to add to the only record he cares about.
Look, he's coming, and he's going to win one. It's going to happen. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. I don't think it's going to be this weekend, because the only thing that matters at Shinnecock is putting. I mean, if you can't putt at Shinnecock, Retief Goosen won it last time because he was the best putter on tour. He was the best putter over 4 days. And here's a guy coming off a tournament where all of a sudden he could not putt in a place in which he had won 5 times. It made no sense. But he used to play Army golf off the tee, left, right, and now he's hitting it right down the fairway. He's the best iron player in the history of the game. His chipping yips are gone. He's going to win a major. It's a matter of when, not if. But I agree with you. You can't say the comeback is complete until he wins a major. Now, a lot of people, if we look at it from a real perspective, a year ago, people thought he might not ever play golf again.
It's unbelievable.
So if we have true perspective, what he's done is nothing short of miraculous. And I don't think you're ever too old to play golf. I don't think you're ever too drunk to fish. Okay? So age, he is timeless. He is ageless.
Yes.
It's going to happen. I just don't think he's there yet, because if you haven't put it all together, you're not going to put it together in a test like Shinnecock Hills.
And it's a really good point Doug makes, and I don't want it to get overlooked. He had spinal fusion surgery. CC brings it up all the time. Nobody's ever come back to play on the PGA Tour at a high level from that surgery. The fact that he has competed, the fact that he has been in tournaments, the fact that we go into each tournament and say, hey, Tiger could win it, is a remarkable story.
Yep.
But his level of expectation and our level of expectation for him are so much higher than that.
Well, he's always said, judge me by my majors, not by the other tournaments. So what you're saying is right. It's not just us wanting to judge him if he wins 15. It's him wanting to judge us, him if he wins 15.
And he wants a chance at 18. And he's 42 years old, and he's got 14 of them. He wins this week, and we're like, okay, so he's at 15. He's probably going to win one more Masters, at least. So that puts him at 16. So then all of a sudden it opens the door back up.
And as CC says, that counts for 2. So then he really just has one more left.
That's only with LeBron and the Warriors.
All right, let's take a break. Coming up, could Lamar Jackson be the Ravens starter week 1? We'll break that down next on First Things First. Back here on First Things First, Eric Mangini is with us. Coach, I know you were super excited about what happened with the World Cup. You were like super excited. I know, we got the bid, 2026. We'll see you there.
And it was an overwhelming, like 134 to 65 was the vote, and 60 of the 80 matches will be in the U.S.
Yeah, well.
20 of the 80 will be in Canada and Mexico, and every match from the quarterfinals on will be here in the United States. It's really exciting.
It's very cool. We can finally go see a game.
No doubt. You're not going to Russia on our week off?
Go see a match.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know what,
match.
Doug?
Absolutely.
Little snooty with the soccer.
I'm not snooty. Soccer people are snooty. They're going to go, Jenna Wolf, it's a pitch.
Oh, my God.
It's a match.
With my name. The Baltimore Ravens have 2 signal callers, quarterbacks, as they say in the NFL, at OTAs this week, at times both on the field together. Joe Flacco coming off kind of a rough year, and their newly drafted guy to Louisville, Lamar Jackson. Ravens are enjoying the creative process, getting them both involved. According to teammates, Lamar seems to be blowing people away.
Every time he runs, I'm in awe, because most people, even especially a quarterback, can't move the way he does. So you just know that this year he's going to make some plays for sure.
Once he gets out the pocket, it's like watching a young Michael Vick. I mean, it's amazing to watch. So when you're defending him, you just got to act like you're tagging off. You don't want to be on the highlight reel.
It's a nice guy to be compared to, Michael Vick, if you're a young guy in this league. What do you think the ceiling is for Lamar Jackson? Let's just keep it to the first year at least.
Well, they're going to get him involved, obviously, and they have Greg Roman there, which I think really helps because of the work that he did in San Francisco and the creativity that he showed in San Francisco. So I like that aspect of it. In terms of how big a package it becomes, that's going to remain to be seen. I don't think it's going to be one of these situations where he eventually gets 50% of the plays. I would imagine it'd be about 10 to 15% of the plays, even in the best situation.
Well, the other thing, though, that we got to recognize is early on, if Flacco is the starter early on and you're just using him in a bit role, that, at least according to recent NFL history, will be short-lived. Every quarterback taken in the first round since Aaron Rodgers has started at some point their rookie season. Like, so, I mean,
except Christian Heck.
No, he wasn't the first round pick. Yeah, every single first round guy starts at some point. And Joe Flacco has been deteriorating over the last few years. Like, there's a reason that Ozzie Newsome traded back into the first round in his final draft as general manager to go get this player. And so I understand that there are some concerns about his refinement as a passer, but there are concerns about Joe Flacco's ability at this point in his career as a passer, and he brings nothing to the table athletically like Lamar Jackson does. So I think I would be surprised if the Ravens don't go have a relatively quick trigger with Joe Flacco, especially because this is the last year they're tied to him from a salary cap standpoint.
Well, there's also, Coach, wouldn't you say the smart fit would be the slash role that the Steelers used with Cordell Stewart, right? I know you said recent history. That's not that recent, right, where you put him all over the field. And even if you listen to those two comments, they didn't say, man, does he read a defense well, or man, does he put the ball on time, on target, exactly where he's supposed to be. They said when he gets out of the pocket, look, he's probably a better athlete than Mike Vick was. Which sounds ridiculous considering Vick was arguably the best athlete to ever play the position. But there's a long way to go in starting not just at quarterback, but in that division. That is a tough and rugged division. They're going to hit you and drive you into the ground.
And you don't design plays where they're just getting out of the pocket. Now, you can have bootlegs. You can have those move the pocket type plays. But what these guys are talking about is when the play breaks down, the things that he can do. And that's great, but it's hard to design the whole offense from that perspective. And I don't know if he's going to beat out Joe Flacco this year. And Joe Flacco still has a lot of money that would be dead money if they moved on from next year. So I don't know if that's a guarantee either. And you got to look at Joe Flacco. He did win a Super Bowl. He did have an amazing season. And I think the pressure being put on Joe Flacco is a really good thing. The last time he played well was when he had the pressure of the contract. Now he has the pressure of someone sitting behind him. I would expect to see him play much better than he has.
It's a great point. Like, some dudes do well under pressure. Some dudes have to have everything just right and stable. And look, you know who Flacco is? We know he was. Of course he was overpaid. Everybody overpays somebody if they win a Super Bowl when they're in the contract year. Every quarterback seems to get overpaid. Yeah, but he's 22. He's somewhere between 22 and 25 touchdowns and somewhere between 12 and 15 interceptions. And if you can live with that, you can live with Flacco. He can make every throw. No, he's not a great athlete. And no, he's not a great vocal leader. That's who he is.
Listen, to me, the Ravens don't have enough. They are not the Ravens they used to be. They do not have enough talent defensively to where your quarterback can be just a guy and you can compete in that division. You need your quarterback to be a difference maker. I'm not saying Lamar Jackson can be that immediately in the NFL. You rarely see that a guy can step into the NFL and instantly be an above-average quarterback. What I am saying is I think the earlier he gets to play, the quicker he gets to that spot. And Flacco's been 24th or worse in quarterback rating each of the last 3 years. The Ravens have only been over 500 once in the last 5 years. Like, they know where they're at. There was a reason they drafted Tyrod Taylor years back and tried to develop him, but then Flacco wins the Super Bowl and Tyrod just sits there for 4 years.
Put him in?
I mean, you got to, obviously, you have to wait and see how he plays. But I would not. I would have a very short trigger. I would, at the first chance I get to get Lamar Jackson real reps, and not only, and this is what I'm curious from you, how much better will he get with reps being the starter in practice? With being named the starter and the game plan is installed through him, that he gets all those number one reps. Like, if I'm Baltimore, my path to contention again is through this young man, and so I want to give him every chance he has to succeed.
Well, they're giving him every chance he has to succeed right now by saying He's going to be active on game one. He's going to play in those games. He's going to have a package that's specific to his skill set. How many of these other rookie quarterbacks are going to have that? How many other rookie quarterbacks are going to actually play in the games and play early? So he's going to have that advantage. But the idea that it has to go through him and that Joe Flacco is completely done, I don't think that's true. Joe Flacco has done a lot of good things, and to say it's just been his fault in Baltimore, I don't think that's fair either.
I don't want to, and if I said it's just his fault, that's not the point I'm making. The point I'm making is you have to be honest about where you're at as a team. And if I thought they still had a top 5 defense, or they still had Jamal Lewis running the football, and you know what? What we want from our quarterback is a caretaker. Then I would understand the argument, because I think Lamar's going to make a ton of mistakes. Lamar will have a 4-interception game. He'll run himself into fumbles. I get that. But because I don't think they have the talent, that type of talent, the difference between I'd rather go 5-11 with Lamar Jackson than 8-8 with Joe Flacco. Is my point. I don't think they have the ability to be much better.
Again, but that's a fan perspective and that's an owner perspective. The coach's perspective is I'd rather go 8-8. I got a better chance of keeping my job and maybe sneaking into the playoffs and stealing one. Probably should have been a playoff team last year if one or two things kind of go the way. Remember, last day of the season, they end up finding a way to back out of the playoffs. But again, that's the problem with draft. That's why you don't draft him. Because now all of a sudden, Joe Flacco's looking over his shoulder. Now all of a sudden things go bad. Everybody points to Lamar Jackson, and you are more likely to go 5-11. I actually think that's a mistake, and I think that's the coach's perspective.
And I wouldn't be surprised if you see Lamar Jackson catching some passes from Joe Flacco or even running the ball, getting it handed off from Joe Flacco. I think the package is going to be extensive, and the real benefit there is it forces teams to spend time on working on both guys, which takes away from focusing on the one.
When you do that, doesn't that take away from what your goal is with Lamar Jackson if you're using him in other positions?
Well, you could say that, but the goal at the end of the day is to win. And the goal at the end of the day is to put as much pressure on the defense as you possibly can. And with his ability to do all those things, I think it is unique versus some of the other running quarterbacks we've seen.
All right, let's break it there. Coach, we'll see you a little bit later on the show. Coming up, could the Warriors be breaking up sooner than we think? I didn't know we were talking about breaking up. Next on First Things First. Hi, and welcome to First Things First. Here with Doug Gottlieb, Nick Wright, Steven Jackson joins the show this morning. Steven, good morning. Great to have you.
Thank you for coming in today for CC.
What's up?
Jenna Wolf.
Shake.
There you go. Hearty handshake.
Cerebrally, I can't quite keep up with. Is that a word?
Yeah, you didn't use it properly, but it is a word.
Cerebrally?
Yeah,
cerebrally, I couldn't keep up with all the various forms of dapping it up. So, is that a right word?
Sure, Jenna.
You see, I'm staying out this
Wow.
Good morning, everybody.
It's great to have you. Let's start with some basketball. The Warriors held their championship parade yesterday. Smiles, laughter, champagne, celebration, pageantry. And one kind of awkward moment. You know how sometimes jokes can be a little too real? How it's supposed to be funny, but is it really funny? Well, the Warriors general manager was caught in a dill pickle, and this is what happened when asked about Kevin Durant. Take a listen.
And then I heard you tell Kevin Durant he can have whatever contract he wants next year.
Yeah, that was just for the media. He can't have anything like that at all.
Mid-level.
Yeah, mid-level, behind closed doors.
Because I think last year he told Steph he could have any contract he wants too.
Yeah.
So
well, yeah, that was different. He's been here from the run, the way before days. He's earned it.
and there ended the Warriors' cohesion right there.
So much for chemistry. That's when it began. The first fissure.
You enjoyed that, Steven. You got a nice little chuckle out of that. What do you think? You think pride could get in the way of the Warriors dynasty if we start talking about who's been here longer, who's more valuable to the team, contracts?
If you ever heard a joke, that was a great joke.
Yep.
That was the biggest joke ever. They just having a good time. If they interviewed him 2 days ago and he said, Kevin Durant can have any contract he wants. He can sign. He meant that day. That was a joke. They was having a good time. They was at the parade, but we all know KD's going to be back at that team. He's going to get any contract, any number he wants. They're going to keep him and Steph happy, and they're going to continue to win championships.
I know the Warriors are going to offer Kevin Durant any contract he wants. I think anyone that assumes they know for certain what Kevin Durant's going to do in 18 days is lying, though. Lying to themselves. Kevin Durant is a guy who admitted right after he picked the Warriors the first time, the next day he called his agent, or Rich Kleiman, I think his agent, business partner, and said, hey, did I just bleep up my life? Is this the biggest mistake I've ever made? Kevin Durant's a guy who, after winning his first Finals MVP and championship, was going through some form of existential crisis to where he wanted to relitigate the decision anonymously with people on the internet. Like, I think the Warriors would be crazy to not say to KD, what do you want, man? You want a no trade? We'll give you no trade. You want the full max? You want a 1+1 so you can do it again next year? You write the contract, and we will sign you to it. That's obviously what they should do. But the idea that this is a 100% done deal and that Kevin Durant couldn't have a change of heart, 2 days ago, he said, I'm going to retire at 35. And 9 hours later, he went on Jimmy Kimmel's show and said, I don't know what the hell I was talking about, retiring at 35. Like, so I don't know. If I'm Bob Myers, I maybe don't make those jokes until he has actually signed the contract. Right. But, I mean, I don't think that's as done of a deal as everyone seems to.
I think it's a done deal. What isn't a done deal is Kevin Durant knowing who he is. He's in this mission of self-discovery. He tried to be a tough guy this year. He's not a tough guy, right? He just that ain't getting the technical fouls. Like, that's Draymond's thing, not your thing. Like, what are you doing? And I think that's kind of part of what's at play here. But the question that Jenna posed is a really good one. Does pride come before the fall? And if you look at the Cleveland Cavaliers, J.R. Smith, too much money. They signed him for too much money. Tristan Thompson, too much money. He's not worth $80 million. Just not. Okay, so listen. So we look at Draymond Green, and Draymond Green's like, yo, I'm done taking pay cuts. I can get the Supermax. Like, look, Draymond, I love you, okay? You're invaluable, but you can't shoot. Okay, and you on your own team are not a 20-point-a-game guy. You're a great integral part of a championship dynasty, but you are not a supermax contract guy. We can't be the Warriors without him. Klay Thompson has previously said, like, hey, look, I'm willing to take less. We'll see. So it is a maybe put your money elsewhere where your mouth is sort of thing. Because if they can keep the salaries in line, then yeah, they should be fine. But if their pride, their ego, and you know how much this league is about respect, it isn't about the actual dollars.
It's about where you are in ranks to your peers.
Right. How much money I make. If they can keep that in check, they can keep this thing going. But history tells us that's the hardest thing to do.
Well, and the good thing about it was helping the Warriors. He did an interview recently, and he was asked.
Who's he?
Kevin Durant.
Okay, sorry.
And he was asked, what do we plan on doing in free agency? I plan on signing with the Warriors. So that's a good sign. You know, he's never came out public. Last time he was a free agent and said where he was going next.
Sure.
So the fact that he publicly said that he planned on staying with the Warriors, that's a good sign for them.
What do you think about, listen, if I'm the Warriors and Draymond's demanding the max, I give him the max. Like, you're going to be capped out anyway. Once you play Steph $40 million a year and KD $40 million a year, no matter what the only difference between paying Draymond $30 million or $26 million is the luxury tax payment you got to pay. Right. Like, you're Joe Lacob. You bought this beachfront real estate. There's only 30 of them in the world. You don't do that to be cheap. Like, and Draymond, while on a lot of other teams, he would not be very valuable. On this team, they have to have him.
With that team and the salary cap and all the money they got to pay people, you got to understand, this is why they need to win championships. This is why they need to play to the end of the season, to sell more tickets, to sell more apparel. This is a big reason why they have this team, and they have to go on and win championships because they need to make more money for this team.
It's one of the reasons, though, that if they were going to make a move, like, look, the idea of moving Klay down to Southern California, where he's from, his dad broadcast for the Lakers, is still an open possibility. Or if you're going to move Draymond, you know, someone who is a true Supermax caliber player, but their contract is before this new Supermax kicked in. Right. That's kind of the magic mix for a move that you could make. Could you go out and get an Anthony Davis or some other star?
That's the only move that makes sense to me.
But so let me ask you about the Anthony Davis thing, though, because this is my issue with any Anthony Davis flirtation, is the players hear that too. And if I'm Klay, I'm like, wait, hold on.
We just won 3 championships.
And you guys, theoretically, on my next deal are going to want me to take a little bit less. I'm never going to be paid as high as Steph or KD. But if I take a little bit less, it makes it easier to trade me for Anthony Davis. If I'm Draymond, maybe one of the reasons I want the max is if I take less than the max, it makes it easier to trade me for an Anthony Davis. Like, that's, if you're one of those guys hearing that, they know they can't sign Anthony Davis outright. They know one of them or both of them, and Klay and Draymond, would have to be moved. How do you think that Anthony Davis rumor sits with those guys?
Well, I mean, you hear that a lot, though, and that's something you can't control as a player. Almost every player done heard that they're getting traded. Shaq got traded. right? So anybody can get traded, but I think at the end of the day, you only worry about what you can't control. And that's playing basketball. You can't worry about getting traded because if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. In a position like Clay said he didn't mind taking a pay cut to stay on the championship team. But if he has that in the back of his mind,
that's what I'm saying.
Traded,
I don't mind taking a pay cut to stay here and win championships. I don't like taking a pay cut so you can ship me to New Orleans.
Right.
So then, to go play with Rondo.
But they wouldn't do that. I think the LeBron James, the idea if they talk to LeBron James, that won't sit well with them, right? Like, hey, that's not who we are, because they would have to move both of those pieces in order to get the LeBron James deal done. I think the Anthony Davis is, hey, look, if Draymond's, you mentioned Shaquille O'Neal. Why did he get traded from L.A.? Want a new contract. Why did he get traded from the Miami Heat? Want a new contract. That's the reason why. So that we have history as our guide that if these guys aren't willing to go like, look, we love you, Draymond. We're going to pay you over $100 million. We're just not going to pay you over $200 million because we got to kind of make it work. And if you're not willing to accept that, then you have to understand we're going to have to look elsewhere. That's a real discussion that you have to have with a semi-hard cap that they have right now, because they got to fix that bench. Otherwise, Houston's a Chris Paul injury away from having caught them this year.
Yep.